Chapter 1431. A Silver Flame? All eyes fell on the flame that Bu Fong had shot out with a flick of his finger. It was a silver flame, glowing brightly. With a flick of his finger, the flame instantly turned into a stream of light and shot out, disappearing in the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, it approached the giant Taotai that Zhao Wuhan had transformed into. The law of devouring faced the silver divine flame that Bu Fong had shot out. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, the two collided together. Many people present were dumbfounded. That boy actually said that Heir Zhao is not qualified for him to use the law. Is he so arrogant? If he doesn't use the power of the law, how can he resist the power of the law that Heir Zhao just unleashed? He's too arrogant. He'll soon realize how stupid his behavior is. Many people present sneered. Even the young master would not dare to be so arrogant as to not use the power of the law when facing Zhao Wuhan. And yet, Bu Fong, a chef from a third-class great world, dared to be so domineering. One should know when to show off. As soon as the silver divine flame appeared, its scorching heat caused the temperature of the whole space to soar. The divine flame collided with Zhao Wuhan's law of devouring. A rumbling sound rang out. The ripple-like energy fluctuations continued to spread out and collapse in all directions. Ripples spread out in all directions. Sand and pebbles flew everywhere on the ground. Under the suppression of Zhao Wuhan's power of the law, the silver flame managed to resist the erosion of the law. The situation made the hair of the people present stand on end. That flame is not ordinary. The young master squinted at the silver divine flame controlled by Bu Fong. The divine flame pulsed, and there seemed to be a unique meaning spreading in it. Oh! The young master gave a soft cry of surprise, as if he found something strange. He was comprehending the law of destruction, which was the supreme law of the universe. Naturally, it was unusual, which made his perception much stronger than that of ordinary demigods. As he sensed it, the power of the law hidden in the divine flame burst out. Was that a flame that contained the power of the law? Was there such a mysterious flame in the world? A loud boom rang out. Zhao Wuhan's figure fell to the ground, but this time he did not look as miserable. Bu Fong floated in the void. His 5 fingers moved. The silver flame began to change slowly. In Zhao Wuhan's eyes, the silver flame disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Gone. Everyone present cried out in surprise. It was just a flame. How could it be so showy? It had indeed disappeared. The temperature disappeared, and the color disappeared. It was as if he had hidden his tracks from the sensory world. This was a different kind of fire. The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. After devouring the power of 3 laws, the divine flame was incredibly powerful. Its scorching heat could even incinerate a god. Bu Fong's fingers twitched. His divine sense spread out like strands of silk, entangling thousands of people. Suddenly, Zhao Wuhan howled miserably on the ground. His surroundings were instantly filled with a high temperature, causing his body to feel as if it was engulfed in flames. He was about to be burned to death. His skin began to turn red. The power of the laws around him seemed to be melting under the heat of the flames. A flame that can turn invisible? The onlookers felt a chill run down their spines, and they felt incredulous. The corners of the young master's mouth curled upward, and he looked intrigued. No wonder he could break the seal of the divine chef temple's inheritance. It seems that this young man does have some tricks up his sleeve. Without using the power of the laws, he is already suppressing Zhao Wuhan. What exactly are his laws? In midair, a rumbling sound rang out. Then, Bu Fong's figure crashed down like a comet, and when he landed, the ground seemed to shake. Zhao Wuhan, whose body was scorched red, roared furiously. Meanwhile, Bu Fong raised his arm, reached out his Taotai arm, and grabbed Zhao Wuhan's body. Then, he slammed the latter to the ground. Boom! The ground burst open in an instant, revealing a huge pit. Smoke and dust filled the air. The law of devouring around Zhao Wuhan dissipated as well. Then he fell to the ground like a dead dog. With one move, Zhao Wuhan was defeated. He was not convinced. He struggled to get up from the ground under Bu Fong's pressure. However, as soon as he got up, Bu Fong pressed his head to the ground again with his Tao Tai arm. In the end, he gave up struggling. An aristocratic family's heir had been defeated by an unknown demigod. What did this mean? It meant that the young man in front of him was also very talented, comparable to the heir of an aristocratic family in the capital and the young master of a king's mansion. The future of such an expert was boundless. Luo Sanyang did not expect Bu Fong to be able to do this. He did not even use the power of the laws, and he had already defeated Zhao Wuhan. Master Chung was dumbstruck. He felt as if something was stuck in his throat, and he felt extremely uncomfortable. Zhao Wuhan, what a good-for-nothing. Clap, clap. Bu Fong defeated Zhao Wuhan. Everyone, including the young master and the other experts, was very surprised. However, to everyone's surprise, the young master clapped his hands and smiled. Not bad, not bad. To be able to break the seal of the divine chef temple's inheritance. You are indeed an extraordinary demigod. You are even stronger than Zhao Wuhan, the young master said with a chuckle. However, the look in his eyes grew sharper and sharper. In that case, I will give you a chance. If you can escape from my 3 guards, I'll forget about this matter, whether you release the 7-colored sky, devouring python or not. The young master said. As soon as his voice rang out, Luo Sanyang's expression changed dramatically. Escape from the young master's guards? Those guards were all elite existences, and their strength had reached the level of a low-grade god. However, they were not ordinary low-grade gods. Every one of them had comprehended at least 3 types of laws. They were extremely strong. By saying that, the young master had no intention of letting Bu Fong escape. Your Highness, Bu Fong is a distinguished guest of the Divine Chef Temple. Luo Sanyang gritted her teeth and wanted to try one last time. However, she was ruthlessly interrupted by the young master. I've given him a chance. Let's see if he can seize it or not, he said, flicking his sleeve. After that, he ignored Luo Sanyang. Rumble. A terrible aura rumbled out of him. It was as if the void was about to distort. 3 guards clad in dark iron armor came walking through the air. They were all elites of Tranquil Sun Mansion, and each of them had a very noble status. They were not ordinary gods, but soldiers under God King Pingyang, who had attacked other divine dynasties on behalf of the Xiai divine dynasty. They were the elites of the elites, and each of them was a veteran of hundreds of battles. The 3 of them attacked. They could even stop a mid-grade god. A mere demigod could not escape. Even the young master might be at a disadvantage if he fought them head-on. Swoosh! The 3 guards held spears in their hands, their eyes sharp. They stared at Bu Fong and let out a long roar. Then, the power of the laws exploded out of them. Terrible divine pressure swept out and crushed toward Bu Fong. Bu Fong let go of Zhao Wuhan. Zhao Wuhan's body fell to the ground with a muffled thud. Bu Fong's expression did not change when he heard the young master's words. Let me escape from the attack of the 3 guards? Then, all debts will be written off? Just escape? A whistling sound rang out, and the void cracked inch by inch. The 3 guards charged at him with terrible killing intent. They were elite soldiers, and when they attacked, they left behind mountains of corpses and seas of blood. It was the will left behind by the war. Ordinary people would go crazy in an instant under the impact of this will, and even a mid-grade god's divine sense might not be able to withstand it. The young master actually asked the guards to attack. He was not giving Bu Fong a way out. The guards' spears came stabbing at him. They were getting closer and closer to Bu Fong's body. Once they pierced through him, the power of the laws contained in them might completely tear Bu Fong to pieces. Completely tear him to pieces. She wanted to make a move, but she was suppressed by the young master and did not have a chance to do so. That made her feel a little desperate. Suddenly, she regretted bringing Bu Fong to this beast-appreciating feast. They were getting closer. They were getting closer and closer. In a deep pit on the ground, Bu Fong raised his head and looked at the 3 god guards charging at him. The spears glinted coldly and glowed brilliantly. In the eyes of the crowd, Bufang should be scared out of his wits. The elite guards were not at the same level as Zhao Wuhan at all. It seemed that the young master had given Bufang a chance. In fact, he had already sentenced Bufang to death. The aura of the sea of blood and mountains of corpses was very terrible. Escape. Standing where he was, Bufang suddenly spat out a word. Everyone, including the young master, froze for a moment. Bufang raised his hand. A golden kitchen knife appeared in his hand, flashing brilliantly with a dragon's roar. Why should I escape? The corner of Bufang's mouth curved slightly. The vermilion robe erupted. A pair of scarlet wings emerged behind his back. His eyes suddenly became very bright. The three god guards. It was a good chance for him to try the kitchen knife of affliction he had just comprehended. Zhao Wuhan was too weak, and he did not even have the chance to use his knife. These three guards are barely enough. Bufang exhaled softly. In the face of the spear, the terrible power of law almost engulfed him. Suddenly, the leading guard's expression changed abruptly. That was because Bufang's aura had changed with the kitchen knife in his hand. In a flash, in the eyes of the guards, Bufang's figure seemed to grow many times taller, turning into a giant that was tens of thousands of meters tall. In their eyes, the golden kitchen knife was dazzling. It slashed down. In an instant, it filled their eyes. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the guard's spear and Bufang's knife collided. The result was beyond everyone's expectations. Chapter 1432. In the Xiai Divine Dynasty, the status of chefs was not low, perhaps thanks to the emergence of the Divine Chef Temple. In fact, even without the Divine Chef Temple, the status of chefs was not low. They could process and cook ingredients into delicious dishes, endow them with strange powers, and make those who ate them break through or gain enlightenment. This kind of profession was highly respected everywhere. Of course, a chef's strength was never very strong. This was the consensus. Since you spent so much effort on cooking, how can you obtain great strength? After all, a person's energy was limited. Therefore, in the Xiai Divine Dynasty, there were basically no geniuses among the younger generation who were chefs, and the young man in front of them, who had shown extraordinary fighting prowess, was a chef. The young master's pupils constricted. He stared ahead in disbelief. Not only him, but everyone was struck dumb. They were horrified by what was happening in front of them. It was like the most terrible scene in the world, and they could not believe what they saw. Each of King Pingyang's soldiers was very strong, and the strength of 3 of them could even fight a mid-grade god. However, the situation in front of them seemed to overturn their worldview. In the face of 3 gods, Bufang did not dodge, but chose to attack brazenly. Was he planning to fight head-on with King Pingyang's 3 god guards? The young master had given Bufang a chance, but it was for Bufang to escape, not for Bufang to fight back. No one could predict the outcome of a head-on confrontation. It was very likely that Bufang would be torn apart and nailed to death by the god guards. The power of the law was surging as if to form a terrible storm that no one could stop. Many people were retreating, even though the strength of the people present was not weak. They were all people of high status in the Divine Dynasty. However, in the face of a battle between gods, they could not help but retreat. If they did not retreat, they would likely be affected by the terrible power. Luo Sanyang's face turned pale. Bufang did not choose to escape, but chose to fight head-on. Is there something wrong with this young man's brain? The young master gave him a chance, but he did not seize it. Master Cheng's face was already twisted with madness. He didn't expect Bufang to make such a choice. This was courting death. It's good that he's dead. It's good that you're dead. Boom. The 3 guards remained expressionless. Their accusation was to carry out the young master's order. Since the young master wanted them to take down the chef, they naturally accepted the order. The laws rumbled. The spear tore through the void, causing the void to tremble and shatter. The terrifying might caused one's soul to tremble. Although they were only guards, they were not ordinary guards. At the very least, they were much stronger than Master Cheng. Every god was not easy to deal with. This was a consensus. Suddenly, Their pupils constricted slightly. Zhang Xian's heart shuddered. Their spears fell to resistance. This resistance prevented their spears from descending. The kitchen knife of affliction. In their eyes, the tiny demigod chef's strength had suddenly risen to a point where it was as if he had reached the heavens. In front of Bufang, they were as insignificant as ants. It was as if Bufang was the real god. The knife slashed down. Wherever the golden kitchen knife passed, the void cracked inch by inch. Terrible energy rumbled and shook everything. There was no power of law. The three guards did not feel any power of law on the knife. However, an indescribable sense of crisis rose in their hearts, which made their minds tremble. This was a divine power. One of the guards sucked in a cold breath and cried out in alarm. Under everyone's gaze, Bufang's kitchen knife collided with the three spears. Pure knife energy collided with the power of law. The law of force, the law of ripping, the law of light. All kinds of laws mixed together. In an instant, they exploded. The explosion tore the void apart, creating terrible turbulence, which contained supreme danger. However, under the saber aura, the flickering power of laws was actually being pushed back repeatedly. A loud boom rang out. The three guards retreated several steps in midair. Every step he took caused the void to emit loud, thumping sounds. Oh, what happened? Everyone's pupils constricted, and they were bewildered. The young master took a deep breath and clenched his fists tightly behind his back. His father's guards were actually pushed back. Even he couldn't do it. I can't believe it's a divine power. One of the guards flushed in disbelief. He stared at Bufang with wide eyes as if he had seen a ghost. How could a demigod use a divine power? What was a divine power? Only those who had become gods and comprehended the supreme laws of the universe could use divine abilities. Ordinary people, even gods who had comprehended the top laws, could not use divine powers. Those who had comprehended the ordinary laws could never touch the threshold of divine powers unless they became god kings. Just now, Bufang had only slashed out a knife energy and collided with them. But in that instant, the knife energy turned into 19,999 knives. They cut their laws into pieces. They were forced to retreat continuously. The divine power the chef in front of them had mastered was not an ordinary one. Slash! One of the guards swayed. The next moment, he opened his mouth, covered his chest with one hand, and coughed out a mouthful of blood that was stained with golden light. After being hit by the divine ability, the divine energy in his body was boiling. The impact on his physical body was almost enough to shatter it. It was too terrible. It was too terrible. What kind of existence did the young master provoke? What? King Pingyang's guards are coughing blood. Has he been repelled? Impossible. It's impossible for a demigod to beat back 3 of King Pingyang's guards, unless this demigod is a genius like the young master. The surrounding people kept exclaiming. They were frightened by Bufang's achievements, and they all heard the guard's words. A divine power? Where did this divine power come from? How could a demigod use a divine power? Everyone's faces were filled with shock. No one doubted the guard's words. After all, only a divine power could crush the laws. A divine power. A divine power. How could a mere demigod master a divine power? Even the crown prince can't do it. The young master was no longer as calm as before. He clenched his fists, and his face was full of shock. Luo Sanyang's eyes lit up. I got it, Luo Sanyang said softly, parting her red lips slightly. Her voice attracted the attention of the crowd. All the people present turned their heads slightly and looked at her. The young master's eyes were fixed on her. I know what Bufang's divine power is. It's the seal of an ancient heaven god's inheritance. Luo Sanyang clenched her fists, and a joyful smile came over her beautiful face. The first seal of the ancient heaven god's inheritance has a test, and after completing the test, one can comprehend the knife skill, the kitchen knife of affliction. That knife skill is extremely powerful. The divine chef temple once sent a perfected god to examine it, and he found that it can evolve into a divine power Luo Sanyang was equally shocked. She was right. However, that god had also said that it was very difficult to evolve a divine power. Bu Fong is really a genius. The divine chef temple must keep him safe. In midair, Bu Fong held the dragon bone kitchen knife with an indifferent face. The kitchen knife of affliction was very strong. Although it was the first time Bu Fong used it in a real battle, he felt his blood boiling. Once he swung it, the golden knife in his spirit sea would tremble, release a monstrous knife intent, and evolve into a divine power. It was as if the knife could break the sky. Rumble. After coughing blood, the three guards' auras fluctuated, and they clenched their spears again. Their fighting spirit was high. They, who had followed King Pingyang to the battlefield, would not allow themselves to be defeated by a mere demigod, not even if they could evolve into divine powers. You can't use the power of a divine power before you become a god. You can't escape. A guard opened his mouth and let out a long howl. Their auras towered into the sky like dragons. The laws swirled around them. The three of them tore through the sky and approached. A divine skill erupted. It was a divine skill taught by King Pingyang, an absolute killing method on the battlefield. When the three of them used it at the same time, it was as if 10,000 beasts were galloping across the void and trampling on everything. It was the most primitive killing intent. It was the pressure from the battlefield. In King Pingyang's residence at this moment, towering killing intent rose from all directions like pillars, echoing with the auras of the three charging experts. It made the three guards' auras even stronger. Crush everything. The hearts of the experts present sank. Even the young master felt a little oppressed. These were his father's soldiers, the soldiers of his father, King Pingyang. The young master's eyes shone brightly. He was awed. Everyone, including Luo Sanyang, fell silent. When Bu Fong sensed the pressure, his movements seemed to slow down a lot. There was an indomitable will in the pressure, a terror that disregarded life and death. There was some respect in his heart. For these soldiers, they were using their lives to protect their homeland. Bu Fong felt that he had to do his best. Perhaps this was the true respect for them. If that's the case, Bu Fong's pupils constricted. His spirit sea rumbled. The next moment, the true form of the divine sense, sitting cross-legged over the god of cooking's menu, suddenly opened its eyes. Buzz, a terrible divine sense, swept out like a storm. As soon as this divine sense appeared, everyone present held their breaths. Bu Fong waved his kitchen knife. A golden dragon roar rang out. It shot up ferociously. The evolution of the divine power. The kitchen knife of affliction. Bu Fong's calm voice rang out. The golden knife in his spirit sea kept vibrating. Buzz, the next moment, the whole world seemed to have lost its luster. All that was left was a thin figure. He casually slashed his knife down. The sky was filled with knife energy. 1, 2, 3, they counted carefully. There were 19,999 of them. Thousands of them gathered and turned into one knife. It collided with the terrible attacks of the three guards. Explosions rang out, filling the air with a deafening rumble. When a divine skill confronted a divine power, it was an innate disadvantage. But this time, they were in a stalemate. A loud boom rang out. In midair, Bu Fong took a few steps back. His arm trembled slightly as he held the dragon bone kitchen knife. On the ground, the knife light dissipated. The three guards maintained the same posture. Blood flowed from their mouths and noses as they gasped for breath. Finally, they dropped to their knees. They were defeated in the end. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a cold breath. The young master's pupils constricted. A divine power is indeed a divine power. He looked at Bu Fong and Bu Fong's expressionless face. Suddenly, his heart was on fire. Buzz, a loud and clear sword cry resounded. The young master took a step forward. The law of destruction surged over his head. A demigod who can evolve a divine power? You are indeed the man valued by the divine chef temple. I won't make things difficult for you today. I'll fight Either way, you can leave. I can't believe that the guards of King Pingyang couldn't even force you to use the power of the law. This makes I very uncomfortable. A silver sword appeared in the young master's hand, whistling as it tore through the void. His long hair was like spears ripping through the sky. Holding the sword, he walked step by step toward Bufong. His eyes were full of fighting spirit. Chapter 1433. Wouldn't it be very embarrassing if I couldn't even force you to use your law? With a silver sword in hand, the young master hovered in midair, his face full of excitement and fighting spirit. Bufong's strength had completely aroused his fighting spirit. Among the younger generation of the Divine Dynasty, he did not take the heirs of the aristocratic family seriously, and the other young masters were all in seclusion to break through to the God realm. As for the Crown Prince, he was no match for him. Therefore, he couldn't find anyone to duel with normally. He was also very confused. It was rare for him to meet Bufong, a chef who could exert a divine power, even though he was only a demigod. He suddenly felt a little happy, as if he had seen his prey. Bufong was very strong, and he had won his respect. The fact that he could resist the full-force attack of his father's 3 guards head-on was enough to show his fearsome strength. That was why the young master's heart was surging with excitement. After all, even though he had suppressed the 3 god guards, Bufong still had not shown the power of the law he had comprehended. This made him even more excited. If he could not even force Bufong to use his law, he would let him go. If that happened, he would be greatly humiliated this time. Luo Sanyang's expression changed abruptly. She did not expect the young master to make a move. The young master was a top genius of the younger generation. Anyone under 100 years old was considered a member of the younger generation. Moreover, the young master was an existence who had comprehended the supreme law of the universe. Bufong might not be able to resist the attack of such an expert. Fortunately, the young master was a reasonable man, so Luo Sanyang breathed a sigh of relief. She knew that he would not kill Bufong. Perhaps he was just excited to see the prey and wanted to fight Bufong. After all, it was rare for a genius of the younger generation to meet an opponent of the same realm as him. In fact, Luo Sanyang was also very curious about the power of the law Bufong had comprehended. Judging from Bufong's strength, the law he comprehended should not be weak. It should at least be a top law. If that was the case, Bufong's status would rise to a higher level. The surrounding people were also extremely shocked. Many people didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but in their hearts, they were somewhat happy. Although it was supposed to be a beast-appreciating feast, it had unexpectedly turned into a battle. However, it was a worthwhile trip to see the young master in action. Moreover, they had witnessed the monstrous Bufong, who had displayed his divine power as a demigod and suppressed 3 Pingyang guards. This was a feast for the eyes of many of them, and they were extremely excited. In the void, the young master was dressed in a brocade robe and wore a golden crown on his head. The silver longsword in his hand was like a silver dragon tearing through the light curtain in the sky. Step by step, he walked on the air. With every step he took, the aura on his body continuously rose, becoming stronger and stronger. By the time he reached Bufong, his aura had reached a terrifying level. That kind of pressure made even Luo Sanyang's heart palpitate. Bufong held the dragon bone kitchen knife and looked indifferently at the young master. His gaze was very calm. Shaking his hand, Bufong gently exhaled. A terrible divine sense filled the air. The corners of the young master's mouth curved upward slightly. His divine sense also surged out and collided with Bufong's divine sense. A silent battle broke out in the blink of an eye. The battle between divine senses was actually a turbulent undercurrent. The young master's divine sense was very strong. After all, he was the descendant of God King Pingyang, and he had been working hard to catch up with his father. Therefore, he worked hard to cultivate and strive to be the strongest expert of a younger generation. However, this time, he had run into Bufong. Their divine senses were equally matched. Interesting. This is really interesting. The young master burst out laughing. Then he focused his eyes. The law of destruction swept out. Rumble. Without saying a word, he slashed his sword toward Bufong. "I hope you won't let me down," the young master roared. The sword light swept out. It was a simple slash. This was the young master's probing strike. Bufong did not use the kitchen knife of affliction. After all, it was a divine ability, and it consumed a lot of his energy. Using it twice was his limit. His fleshly body could not withstand the pressure of the divine ability. So, in the face of this slash, Bufong chose to change his strategy. He put away the kitchen knife. Then he took out the black turtle constellation wok. He held the pitch-black wok in his hand. Facing the young master's slash, he met it with the wok. The sword and the wok collided. A loud thud rang out. The sword energy echoed in the void. The young master's pupils constricted. He could not believe that his sword had failed to break Bufong's black wok. He comprehended the law of destruction, and the law of sword path was his second law, a top law under the supreme laws of the universe. These two laws enveloped his sword, but he could not break the wok. It seemed that Bufong's wok was definitely an extraordinary item, and its grade was probably not much lower than the silver dragon sword in his hand. This made things even more interesting. The sword light swept out. It kept attacking. The two of them clashed in the sky. In fact, it was the young master who was attacking, and Bufong who was defending. In the face of the sword light that filled the sky, Bufong just blocked it with a black wok. The black turtle constellation wok was extremely hard, and Bufong was not worried that it would be destroyed by the young master's sword. The scene seemed a little strange. The people present also had a puzzled look on their faces. This battle seems a little strange. As the young master fought, he also found something strange. He could not help but fly into a rage out of humiliation. The law of destruction surged. The next moment, a terrible pressure descended. Buzz the silver dragon soared into the sky and turned into a five-clawed silver dragon, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Then, it charged at Bufong. This was a slash that contained the power of the law, and it was the supreme law of the universe. Bufong took a deep breath. He also felt a terrible pressure. The supreme law of the universe was indeed strong. Bufong did not know if the black turtle constellation wok could block it. He raised his hand, grabbed the edge of the wok with both hands, and held it in front of him. The five-clawed silver dragon charged down and hit the black turtle constellation wok. A loud rumble rang out. The roar of the silver dragon shook the heavens. Bufong immediately felt the terrible sword intent of destruction spreading toward him. Buzz, his vermilion robe, fluttered in the wind, and there seemed to be a crimson vermilion bird crying behind him. Boom! Bufong's figure was knocked down from the void. He fell to the ground. His legs sank into the ground. Puff! 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 The sword chi slashed down like rain. The area around Bufong was full of holes, and the ground was full of holes. Even a low-grade god would be killed by the sword's power. Everyone sucked in a cold breath. The young master is serious this time. He's indeed a monster. The power of this slash is so terrifying. After all, it's a supreme law of the universe. The surrounding people exclaimed incomparably, all of them exclaiming in admiration. The law of destruction and sword path were a good match, and when combined, the young master was almost invincible in the same realm. Even Bufong, who had shown brilliantly just now, was being suppressed and beaten. Perhaps this was the young master's greatness. Smoke and dust billowed. In the sky, the young master held his sword, and the sword energy turned into 9 silver dragons that wheeled around him. The dragons roared from time to time as if they were singing. The 9 Revolution Sword Song. This is my sword. The young master's eyes gleamed as he stared at Bufong. The smoke and dust dispersed. Bufong's figure was revealed. On the ground, the onlookers were watching from a distance. Bufong shook the black turtle constellation wok and felt the great force coming from his palm. It was indeed very sullen to be suppressed and beaten. It was not his style. Bufong exhaled. He rose to his feet and put away the black turtle constellation wok. At this moment, Bufong's eyes slowly became sharp. This scene caused everyone's hearts to tremble. Was Bufong getting serious? Young master, it seems that you want to see my law. Bufong exhaled. He said faintly. His voice was calm. However, when it reached everyone's ears, everyone's curiosity was piqued. They all stared at Bufong with bright eyes. Yes, let I see it. The corners of the young master's mouth curled into a smile. The 9 silver dragons wound around him. They set off his body, which shone with divine light. In the distance, Zhao Wuhan spat out blood and climbed to his feet from the ruins. He was in a sorry state, and his face was covered in dust. He glanced in horror at Bufong, who was confronting the young master in the distance. His heart trembled. Bufong was too terrifying. That punch would probably be his nightmare forever. All of a sudden, Zhao Wuhan's body froze. His eyes widened, and he looked into the distance in horror. Over there, a more and more terrible pressure was slowly rising from Bufong's body. The rune of law began to gather over Bufong's head. Bufong, who had never used the power of law before, was finally going to show it. The moment the rune of law appeared, everyone was dumbstruck. The sound of people sucking in their breaths rose and fell. The young master's face twitched, and his eyes were filled with horror. The law of transmigration. Chapter 1434. Bufong did not conceal his law. In fact, there was no need to do so. He was just too lazy to use it before. However, in the face of the young master who was going all out, Bufong felt a little pressure. This pressure made Bufong feel that he might not be able to defeat his opponent if he did not use his law. Therefore, Bufong activated the law of transmigration in him. This was also the first time Bufong used the law seriously in a fight. Buzz rich runes of the law wheeled over Bufong's head and kept condensing. Soon, they turned into thousands of streams of light that looked like rainbows, dazzling and dazzling. A demigod could comprehend the laws, but they were not complete laws. When one became a god, one could comprehend a perfect law. Everyone knew this. However, the law comprehended in the demigod realm was the foundation. It was the foundation after one became a god. In the demigod realm, if one's foundation was not strong enough, it would easily limit one's achievements after becoming a god. Therefore, the demigod realm was very important. This was also why the crown prince, the young master, and the heirs of the aristocratic families were respected by everyone in the divine dynasty. It was not because of their strength, but because of their potential. Zhao Wuhan's eyes widened. Even when he was in a sorry state, he had never been so frightened. Even when he was pressed to the ground by Bufong, he did not lose heart. He had even made up his mind that after this lesson, he would cultivate harder when he returned to the aristocratic family. At that time, he would come out of seclusion and crush Bufong. He had this confidence because he was the heir of an aristocratic family and had a unique foundation. He had comprehended the top law, the law of devouring. However, at this moment he saw the law Bufong displayed. He had always thought that Bufong only comprehended an ordinary law. Otherwise, he would not have displayed it. However, when he saw Bufong's law, he was left in a daze. That familiar, terrifying fluctuation, that oppressive pressure that seemed to come from a superior, caused Zhao Wuhan's heart to beat half a beat slower. This feeling, he had only felt it from the young master. Without a doubt, just like the young master, Bufong's law was a supreme law of the universe. What the hell? Zhao Wuhan felt as if an invisible arrow had pierced through his chest, causing him to feel incomparable sorrow. It was one thing if he couldn't win in a fight, but now, even his law was being suppressed. Didn't Master Chung say that this guy was just a bumpkin from an ordinary macro world? How is this a country bumpkin? Even the young master would not be able to do that. The law of samsara. All the experts present were people of high status in the divine dynasty. As soon as Bufong's law appeared, they naturally recognized it. The most mysterious supreme law of the universe, the transmigration law. Oh my God! Once the law of reincarnation appeared, it transformed into a vortex above Bufong's head. It was like a blazing sun, dazzling and dazzling, shocking everyone. Even the young master, who was standing proudly in the sky and holding the silver dragon sword, was dumbstruck. He had guessed that Bufong might have comprehended top law, but it never occurred to him that Bufong had comprehended the supreme law of the universe. How many existences in the whole divine dynasty had comprehended the supreme law of the universe? There were 3 young masters, 1 crown prince, and a genius from the top aristocratic family, the Luo family. In total, there were only 5 existences who had comprehended the supreme law of the universe. And that was because they had been living in the divine dynasty since childhood. They had cleansed their bodies with countless treasures of heaven and earth, worked hard under the God King's guidance, and cultivated for 10 years as if it were a day. But in the end, this chef, who came out of nowhere, actually comprehended the supreme law of the universe. At this moment, the young master suddenly panicked. Luo Sanyang was dumbfounded. She covered her red lips with her delicate hand and did not know how to express the emotions in her heart. Bufong actually comprehended the law of reincarnation, the most mysterious and rarest of the 5 supreme laws of the universe, the law of reincarnation. Hiss, the sound of people sucking in their breaths rang out one after another. Master Cheng's pupils shrank to the size of sesame seeds. His whole body seemed to be convulsing. The supreme law of the universe? Is this a joke? How could a country bumpkin chef from an ordinary great world comprehend the supreme law of the universe, which even the crown prince of the divine dynasty had to go through thousands of hardships to comprehend? Is this a joke? Bufong did not know how many people would be shocked when he displayed the law of reincarnation. At this moment, he was immersed in the nourishment of the law of reincarnation. At the same time, the runes of law spread and lingered around him. His fleshly body kept getting stronger, and his Taotai arm kept absorbing the law of reincarnation. Bufong opened his eyes. He looked at the young master in the sky. "You want to see my law? Now you can see it." The corners of Bufong's mouth twitched slightly as he said indifferently, "No wonder everyone said that the laws were the foundation of gods." After activating the power of the law, Bufong felt that his fighting prowess had risen to a whole new level. He stomped his foot. Bufong soared into the sky. The runes of law spread across his Taotai arm, looking very magical. At this moment, the young master recovered from his shock. The law of reincarnation. There was a look of excitement in the young master's eyes. "Mister, I didn't expect you to comprehend the supreme law of the universe as well. You and I have become friends after a fight. I won't make things difficult for you. I only ask that you fight me with all your might." The young master clenched his silver dragon sword. His fighting spirits soared into the sky. Buzz, the law of destruction, surged over his head. 9 silver dragons wheeled around each other. 9 dragons sword song. "Open," the young master roared. It was rare for him to meet a genius who could fight with him, so he was overjoyed. A hearty fight was what he needed. He waved the silver dragon sword, and the 9 silver dragons roared. At this moment, the young master displayed his power to the extreme. He was thoroughly displaying the power of a genius from the divine dynasty. Rumble. The whole King Pingyang's residence seemed to be trembling. The surrounding experts retreated with horror in their eyes, watching the battle in the sky between the 2 existences who had comprehended the supreme laws of the universe. A battle like this was a once-in-a-century opportunity. After all, there were only a few geniuses in the divine dynasty who had comprehended the supreme laws of the universe. Most of them were in secluded cultivation. They wanted to comprehend more laws and break through to higher realms. The legendary crown prince, who was also the heir of the divine dynasty's god emperor, had comprehended 2 supreme laws of the universe. His strength was so strong that he could suppress a newly advanced high-grade god with his demigod cultivation base. It should be noted that high-grade gods had comprehended 18 laws. At this moment, such an unprecedented battle was unfolding in front of them. Buzz, as soon as the law of reincarnation appeared, the sky changed color instantly. The young master's law of destruction resonated with it. At this moment, all the experts in the Divine Dynasty's capital sensed the aura. The few geniuses who had been cultivating in seclusion opened their eyes and looked in the direction of King Pingyang's residence. They sensed the strange aura of the supreme laws. However, they did not do anything. They just sighed with emotion for a while, then became more and more eager to cultivate. They, who had comprehended the supreme laws, were the only ones who understood the urgency in their hearts. If they could not even manage themselves, how could they have time to care about others? Bufang stepped up into the sky. There seemed to be a tiger in his chest, and his momentum was rising steadily. It was no weaker than when he used his divine power. This kind of power was terrifying. 9 silver dragons, shrouded in the aura of the law of destruction, rushed down. In the blink of an eye, it exploded around Bufang. The young master's eyes were as bright as pillars as he fixed them on Bufang. He thrust out his sword, which seemed to pierce through the void. Bufang raised his arm. The yin and yang energy swirled around it, and the runes of law filled the air. As Bufang threw out a punch, it immediately carried a vast amount of energy. Facing the 9 dragons, Bufang threw out a punch without hesitation. He threw out a punch. The yin and yang Tao Tai immediately rushed out his arm, grabbed the 9 dragons, and began to bite each other. The sword flashed like a dragon. The punch was powerful. The collision between the fist and the sword made everyone shudder with fear. It was extremely terrifying. Boom, boom. The collision of the law of transmigration and the law of destruction was like the collision of 2 nuclear bombs, causing a loud noise that shattered heaven and earth. The sound of the explosion shook heaven and earth. The whole Divine Dynasty seemed to be shaking in the explosion. The people present all sucked in their breaths. This kind of battle made them very happy to watch. Master Cheng's face was ashen. He knew that he would not be able to kill Bufang this time, and he would probably be killed as well. Zhao Wuhan was dumbfounded. This was Bufang's strength. With such strength, he could probably kill him with a wave of his hand and a stomp of his foot. It was not something he could resist. Were the supreme laws of the universe so terrifying? No wonder the young master scolded him with disappointment. His foundation was not as good as Bufang's, but he was still unwilling to work hard. At this moment, Zhao Wuhan suddenly felt a little remorseful. He regretted his ignorance and incompetence. He finally understood why the heirs of the other aristocratic families cultivated so hard. They just wanted to keep up with the pace of the top geniuses. A boom rang out. Countless sword lights collapsed and scattered. In the sky, a dazzling fist smashed down. It turned into a disk of yin and yang energy. The disk smashed down and collided with the silver dragon sword. A deafening sound filled the air. The next moment, everyone was horrified. The silver dragon sword flew out of his hand. It streaked across the silver light and stabbed into the ground, shaking back and forth. Boom! In the sky, a silhouette was sent flying backward. Blood spurted out of his mouth. The young master, clad in a brocade robe, fell to the ground and staggered back. With every step he took, his aura weakened a little. In the end, his whole body was shaking. In the sky, the light dissipated. The vortex formed by the law of transmigration was spinning. The vermilion robe fluttered. Bufang slowly stepped forward. The power of the Tao Tai arm and the law of transmigration, the rough yin and yang transmigration fist he had unleashed was unexpectedly strong. He had suppressed the young master with one punch. Chapter 1435. In the sky, a thin figure stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His striped red and white vermilion robe fluttered in the wind, making him look like a banished immortal. However, everyone was shocked. No one had expected the beast-appreciating feast to turn out like this. It had become the young man's stage. He had defeated 3 Pingyang guards with one slash. He had defeated the genius young master with one punch. Such a spectacular achievement was enough to make him famous in the Divine Dynasty's capital. His talent was enough to make him the target of recruitment by all the aristocratic families. Even the imperial family of the divine dynasty would extend an olive branch to him. A genius who comprehended the supreme law of the universe had a promising future. On the ground, the young master bowed his head, looking a little dazed. He was defeated. He was actually suppressed by one punch. The people around him were also silent, not knowing what to say. No one had expected the outcome to be like this. The young master, who was known as a genius, was defeated by a chef's fist. Even his sword was knocked flying away. Is he really so strong? Luo Sanyang did not know what to say. Bu Fang's fearsomeness was beyond her expectation. Zhao Wuhan's face was expressionless. It was numbness. He gave Bu Fang a deep look. He could not be jealous of Bu Fang. Perhaps this was why Luo chose Bu Fang, because he was not as good as Bu Fang. Zhao Wuhan got up from the ground in embarrassment and walked out of the mansion in a daze. Bu Fang descended from the sky. The law of transmigration disappeared. The oppressive force he exuded was gone as well. If he used the law of transmigration, Bu Fang's fighting prowess should be close to that of a mid-grade god. Even so, it was enough to show how terrifying Bu Fang was. The young master's absent-mindedness did not last long. After all, he was a genius, and his mental endurance was very strong. He might not be able to accept his failure for a while, but after thinking about it carefully, he figured it out. Maybe father is right. I'm still too impetuous. Maybe this is the gap between me and other geniuses. The young master smiled bitterly and looked at Bu Fang with a helpless look in his eyes. Today's defeat was not necessarily a bad thing for him. From today onwards, he needed to cultivate even harder. He had always wanted to see the limits of his combat power, but he didn't know that he had already been surpassed by someone. Thank you for showing mercy. The law of reincarnation truly lives up to its reputation. The young master pulled out the silver dragon sword, glanced at Bu Fang, and said with a smile. His complexion returned to normal as he wiped away the bloodstain at the corner of his mouth, his expression indifferent. Bu Fang looked at the young master in surprise. He didn't expect him to be such an open-minded person. Bu Fang nodded at the young master, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. The young master was careless. Bu Fang said. The young master burst out laughing. He looked at Bu Fang with admiration in his eyes. A defeat is a defeat, but I won't be defeated again. The young master chuckled. My strength is nothing among the geniuses who have comprehended the supreme laws of the universe. You should be careful, mister. When those geniuses come out of seclusion, they will surely come to see your law of reincarnation. The law of reincarnation is extremely mysterious among the supreme laws of the universe. The young master's words seemed to carry a hint of warning. Bu Fang nodded. The young master was not a domineering existence. Perhaps this was the reason why the divine dynasty could prosper. The top existences of the younger generation were all chasing after power, and there was no intrigue. This would only make the divine dynasty stronger and stronger. Since the seven-colored sky devouring python has run away, then so be it. This king will not pursue it. It's just a worldly possession, and I just find it interesting. After today's defeat, this king has also thought it through. Instead of focusing on those things, it's better to focus on cultivation. If I can become a god king, I can even capture a golden-winged roc as a mount. The young master roared with laughter. His words were arrogant, but he had the capital to be so. Bu Fang twitched the corner of his mouth and nodded. He agreed with the young master's idea. However, it would be a pity to use a golden-winged roc as a mount. It would be best to barbecue it. Roast a roc. Call it a roc. Even a god king would drool over such a top-notch dish. Clap, clap. Just then, the young master raised his hand and slapped it down. Immediately, the sound of a zither rang out from all directions. The servants, who had been watching the fight for a long time, came out one after another, holding the piping hot dishes. And although the seven-colored sky devouring python was gone, the banquet still had to be held. Otherwise, the food would be wasted. In fact, many people present did not come for the seven-colored sky devouring python, but for the food at the banquet. Master Chung left dejectedly. Zhao Wuhan, on the other hand, returned to the Zhao family in a daze and began to cultivate in seclusion. As the banquet continued, the young master took Bufang's hand and kept talking. From time to time, he would stroke Bufang's palm with his palm, which made Bufang's hair stand on end. The food tasted bland and tasteless. These dishes were cooked by the Earth Divine chef that the young master had specially invited. The aroma assailed everyone's nostrils and whetted their appetite. The young master thought highly of Bufang, and he felt as if he had found a confidant. He kept talking to Bufang. He even revealed his intention to recruit Bufang. Of course, Bufang turned him down. Luo Sanyang was very anxious, but she breathed a sigh of relief when she heard Bufang's refusal. She called the young master's treachery. Bufang's talent was too extraordinary. Whether it was his talent in cultivation or cooking, he was worthy of the Divine Chef Temple's recruitment. If she was deceived by the young master, she would have to cry in the toilet. After the meal, she took Bufang's hand and left King Pingyang's residence. The young master had been standing at the entrance of the mansion, watching Bufang leave. After that, the crowd dispersed. Only King Pingyang's residence was left in a mess. However, the servants began to get busy, and before long, they had tidied up the mess. Rumble. In the sky, all of a sudden, an explosion rang out. The void was torn apart. A five-clawed silver dragon wheeled in the sky. The silver dragon pulled a chariot, on which stood a stalwart figure. The chariot rumbled, crushing the void with its weight. The young master looked up and was slightly shocked when he saw the scene. He quickly bowed. "Father," the young master said respectfully. The servants around him also knelt on the ground with great respect. The chariot landed. The silver dragon shrunk into a small silver snake and coiled around the burly man's body. A terrifying aura fluctuated on the man's body, and the aura around him seemed to be able to shatter the void. "Oh, you're holding a banquet again? Why don't you focus on your cultivation? Indulging in debauchery all day long, what a scandal." The burly man glanced coldly at the young master. That made the young master's heart tremble. In the past, he would not have been convinced because he was a genius who had comprehended the supreme law of the universe and was extremely proud. But after being defeated by Bufang today, his mentality had changed a lot. "You're right, father. It's my fault. Father, I have a request," the young master said with a respectful look on his face. King Pingyang paused slightly. "Why is this boy's attitude a little strange today? Did he get into trouble again?" "Oh, tell me. I want to cultivate the 10,000 Dragons sword song. Please grant my wish, father." The young master looked up, his eyes full of determination. His determination made King Pingyang arch his brows slightly. This boy looks like he's been stimulated by something inside the luxurious worship. For a moment, the atmosphere was a little quiet. Luo Sanyang's long eyelashes fluttered slightly as she stared at Bufang with her charming big eyes. It was as if she wanted to see through Bufang. She did not expect that Bufang, who looked like a country bumpkin, had hidden his strength. He had suppressed the young master with one punch. This was something she had never thought of before. Divine powers, supreme laws, cooking skills, all of this made Bufang seem to be shrouded in a layer of vague gauze. The more she wanted to find out, the more incredulous she found it. Ahem. The awkward atmosphere made Bufang a little uncomfortable. He cleared his throat expressionlessly, breaking the silence in the warship. "Thank you for your help, Steward Luo," Bufang said. In fact, Luo Sanyang should have guessed that the disappearance of the seven-colored sky-devouring python had something to do with him, but she still stood on his side, even if it meant offending the young master. For this, Bufang had to thank her. "I know you went to King Pingyang's residence for the seven-colored sky-devouring python." Luo Sanyang stretched lazily, showing off her voluptuous figure. "I didn't expect you to be so bold, but you have the capital to be bold. I'm afraid the news of you defeating the young master will spread throughout the Divine Dynasty's capital tomorrow, and the news that you have comprehended the supreme law of the universe will soon spread," Luo Sanyang said. Her face suddenly became a little serious. "The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. You should know this. You are just a demigod from an ordinary great world. Even if you have comprehended the supreme law of the universe, you are still nothing in the divine dynasty's capital. Although the heir to the throne is the crown prince, the princes are also fighting for power. People with great potential like you will certainly be recruited, so your situation is not very good. But now that you are under the divine chef temple, you have nothing to worry about, Luo Sanyang said. Bufang nodded. Of course, he understood this, but he did not care. What he cared about now was how to find the Lord Go and the others. In fact, it was not a bad thing to become famous. At least, once he became famous, it would be much easier for the Lord Go to find him. Let's go. Let's go back to the divine chef temple first. It's time to settle some scores. Suddenly, Luo Sanyang pursed her red lips into a cold smile. Bufang paused. Then, he twitched the corner of his mouth disdainfully. Yes, it's time to settle some scores. If I kill him, will the divine chef temple blame me? Bufang said expressionlessly. No. I don't know anything. Luo Sanyang narrowed her eyes like a lazy cat and stared at Bufang. Chapter 1436. He returned to the distinguished guest tower of the divine chef temple. Bufang did not immediately go to find Master Cheng. Although Master Cheng had risked his face to plot against Bufang, he did not care. However, Bufang did not care. Sometimes, with absolute strength, no matter what schemes you had, you would have nothing to fear. Of course, it was also because Bufang could not wait to see Hua. She returned to the luxurious guest room. After saying goodbye to Bufang, Luo Sanyang's face darkened. She knew that Master Cheng was in trouble. Bufang closed the door. With a thought, he entered the heaven and earth farmland. That was right. Back in King Pingyang's residence, Bufang had taken Hua into the farmland at the last moment. That was why the young master could not find Hua. Of course, taking Hua into the farmland would cause a violent fluctuation of the will of the Great Path. The fluctuation was obvious, so Bufang used an explosion to cover it up. Although it was exposed by Master Cheng in the end, it was all solved perfectly now. His mind went into the farmland. A warm breeze was blowing. A rich, fruity aroma filled the air. It was harvest time in the farmland. Bufang landed and stepped on the crisp grass. The fragrance of grass, fruit, and earth assailed his nostrils. Bufang walked with his hands clasped behind his back and took a deep breath. In front of the wooden hut, Hua had transformed into a young girl. Her slender figure was curvaceous, and she was sitting in Nyo Hansen's wooden chair, munching on a juicy spirit fruit. Nyo Hansen was sitting at the side with a smile on his face, holding a fruit basket full of spirit fruits and emanating dense spiritual energy. When he saw Bufang, Nyo Hansen put down the fruit basket and hurried to greet Bufang. "Io, Owner Bu, what brings you here?" Nyo Hansen's face was full of smiles. Now that the heaven and earth farmland was in good order, he hoped that Bufang could come here every day. Bufang nodded and chatted with Nyo Hansen for a while. He couldn't wait to come to Hua's side. Bufang's eyes sharpened as he stared at Hua. "Are you okay?" Bufang asked. Hua opened her mouth wide and stuffed the entire fist-sized spirit fruit into her mouth. A satisfied look appeared on her beautiful face. She looked at Bufang, grinned, and shook her head. "I'm fine. How did you get caught?" Bufang asked the question he wanted to ask the most. Hua stuffed another spirit fruit into her mouth. Perhaps she was starving. "We encountered another space beast in the space turbulence. We were separated. When I rushed out of the teleportation portal, I was surrounded and beaten up," Flowery said innocently. She didn't know what had happened. "Another savage beast? Are you saying that everyone is scattered? Lord Go and you were separated?" Bufang furrowed his brows. He felt that the situation was getting serious. He thought that after finding Hua, he would be able to know more about Lord Go. What was that savage beast? Bufang took a deep breath. Bufang thought that there was only one. He didn't expect that there would be two. "I think so. But with Lord Go's power, he shouldn't be in danger. But I'm not sure about you, big sister Hua." Hua's mood became a little gloomy. It was a bad start. As soon as they left the netherworld, they encountered such difficulties. It was all because of that savage beast. Bu Fong furrowed his brows, and there was a sharp look in his eyes. That savage beast was definitely not dead. Even if he used the perishing pot, he might not be able to kill it. All right, you have a good rest. You can choose to stay in the heaven and earth farmland or go out with me. Bu Fong looked at Hua, letting her make the choice. After all, Hua had been captured by the young master, so she couldn't hide the seven-colored sky devouring Python's aura. Once she went out, she would probably be exposed. However, Bu Fong didn't care. He had the confidence to protect Hua now. I want to go out. I don't want to stay here. Hua said hurriedly. Tears streamed down Johansen's cheeks. Even so many spirit fruits couldn't keep you? Bu Fong respected Hua's choice, but to avoid unnecessary trouble, Bu Fong stipulated that after Hua went out, she had to stay in her human form most of the time. Hua naturally wouldn't object, and she nodded her head quickly. They rested in the heaven and earth farmland for a while. Bu Fong sat cross-legged under the 9-revolution Great Path tea tree, closing his eyes to rest. His divine sense slowly became more condensed in the tea tree's unique essence. The heaven tree swayed gently, its leaves lush and green. On it, a blooming senseless lotus was emitting a brilliant light. After a battle, Bu Fong needed to consolidate his cultivation base. Under the cultivation of the heaven tree and the Great Path tree, Bu Fong's understanding of the laws became more condensed. Time passed. Bu Fong opened his eyes and left the heaven and earth farmland. He didn't bring Hua out for the time being. Bu Fong planned to let Hua work as a waiter in the restaurant, and he would let Hua leave when the restaurant opened. Stretching his back, Bu Fong rose to his feet. He took a bath in a luxurious room. Wrapped in a bath towel, his hair was still dripping water, and his fair chest was almost exposed. He rested for the night. The next day, Bu Fong left the guest room. Walking in the distinguished guest tower, many people saw Bu Fong and recognized Bu Fong, and their faces showed awe. Whether they were gods or demigods, spirit divine chefs or earth divine chefs, Bu Fong's achievements yesterday had spread throughout the divine dynasty. Today, most people in the divine dynasty knew that Bu Fong had comprehended the law of transmigration, the supreme law of the universe. He had even defeated the young master of King Pingyang. Some people greeted Bu Fong enthusiastically when they saw him. The situation made Bu Fong a little uncomfortable. He didn't go to the divine chef temple. Bu Fong walked out of the distinguished guest tower and planned to wander around the divine dynasty. Luo Sanyang didn't come to him today, but Bu Fong didn't mind. After all, she was the steward of the divine chef temple, and she had a lot of things to do. Bu Fong boarded the dragon carriage. As the coachman cracked his whip, the carriage moved slowly. It was much slower than Luo Sanyang's worship. Bu Fong missed Luo Sanyang's luxurious worship a little. However, there was an advantage to riding in the carriage, which was that he could enjoy the scenery of the divine dynasty's capital up close. The coachman didn't dare to breathe too loudly. Bu Fong was an existence who walked out of the divine chef temple's distinguished guest tower. That identity was not something he could touch, so he just needed to pull the carriage. Bu Fong was glad to have some peace and quiet. Before long, the carriage arrived in front of Luo Sanyang's commercial building. Bu Fong got out of the carriage and paid the coachman the source stones. In the divine dynasty, source stones were the only and universal currency. When Bu Fong opened his restaurant, he would probably use source stones as the currency. Source stones were an important cultivation resource. In the divine dynasty, many aristocratic families had powerful industries in order to earn source stones and increase their cultivation resources. Bu Fong stepped into the commercial building. It was a prosperous commercial building, with all kinds of shops on each floor. There were also many gourmet shops on each floor. Each floor had a different cuisine. Bu Fong had nothing to do, so he went to one shop after another. In any case, he had a lot of source stones now. The divine chef temple was very generous and never stingy with source stones. The chefs in these restaurants were not weak. Most of them were earth divine chefs. In fact, those who were not earth divine chefs would not dare to open a restaurant in such a prosperous commercial district. Shuttling between the restaurants, Bu Fong tasted the delicacies. Earth Divine chefs had formed their own school of cooking, and they had their own style. Every dish they cooked was superb. At least in terms of taste, Bu Fong could not find any major fault. At this level, however, cooking was not just about the surface. It was more about the emotions contained in the ingredients and the dishes that had been cooked. The higher the level of cooking, the more important the emotions contained in the dishes. The better the cooking, the more important the emotions contained in the dishes. They could determine the quality of a dish. He grabbed a pair of chopsticks. Bu Fong picked up a piece of meat that was covered in juice. He stuffed it into his mouth and took a bite. The juice splashed out, and the meat inside filled his mouth. The meat was obviously not ordinary, and it was just right when mixed with the other ingredients. If there was one flaw, it would probably be the knife skills. From a perspective of knife skills, it might be slightly inferior. In front of Bu Fong was a table full of dishes. As an excellent chef, he must learn humbly and not be too proud. Even if it was a very ordinary chef, there were still points in his cooking that could be learned. Tap, tap, tap. Luo Sanyang came over, swaying her body. It was not difficult for her to find out Bu Fong's whereabouts. When she learned that Bu Fong was in her commercial building, she came over in her red boots. Luo Sanyang did not know whether to laugh or cry when she saw Bu Fong eating the delicacies so happily. You're still in the mood to eat and drink. Old man, Chung has escaped. Luo Sanyang sat opposite Bu Fong with a gust of fragrant wind. A rich, meaty aroma burst out of Bu Fong's mouth. Oh, he escaped? Bu Fong paused. That old man has a good interpersonal relationship. He bribed someone in the Divine Chef Temple's prison and escaped overnight. However, I think he is too ashamed to stay in the Divine Dynasty now. Of course, you still have to be careful. That old man is narrow-minded, and he might come to you for revenge. After all, you have taken everything that belonged to him. Luo Sanyang picked up a pair of chopsticks and sniffed the aroma. Then, she picked up a piece of meat and stuffed it into her mouth. I took it with my strength. How can he take revenge? Bu Fong said indifferently, twitching the corner of his mouth. After that, Bu Fong put down his chopsticks. Luo Sanyang smiled. You're right. Strength speaks in the Divine Chef Temple. Suddenly, she paused. She seemed to feel Bu Fong's serious gaze. She was puzzled. Bu Fong's serious gaze made her heart skip a beat, and her little heart began to beat wildly. This young man, could it be? Steward Luo, I have something to trouble you with. Bu Fong thought for a moment and said solemnly to Luo Sanyang. What is it? Luo Sanyang was a little disappointed, but she still asked doubtfully. I need you to help me find some information. Bu Fong thought for a moment, then told Luo Sanyang about you and Lord Go. As it turned out, Luo Sanyang was trustworthy. All right, leave it to me, Luo Sanyang. Luo Sanyang patted her bulging chest confidently. Also, when will your restaurant open? Do you really not want me to find you a professional renovation team? Luo Sanyang squinted at Bu Fong suspiciously. It opens tomorrow, said Bu Fong. Tomorrow? Luo Sanyang paused, and the doubt in her eyes grew. Bu Fong has been eating and drinking, but I don't see him renovate. Is he really going to open tomorrow? If such a good shop was wasted by Bu Fong, she would feel a little heartache. Oh, right. Luo Sanyang seemed to think of something. She cupped her chin and looked at Bu Fong. Your deeds yesterday have spread, and many people have come to me, asking me to introduce them to you. There are princes, heirs of aristocratic families, and a few coquettish bitches from aristocratic families. Do you want to meet them? Luo Sanyang asked. Bu Fong ate the last mouthful of food and wiped his mouth with a white cloth. He glanced at Luo Sanyang with a straight face. No, reject them all for me. Chapter 1437. No. Luo Sanyang paused. She did not expect that Bu Fong would refuse so readily. Are you sure you don't want to see them? Those coquettish bitches are all famous beauties in the Divine Dynasty. Each of them is graceful and charming, and they are the dream lovers of many geniuses. Luo Sanyang rested her chin on her hand and said with a smile. Bu Fong glanced at her. Are you sure she's not talking about me? Anyway, it doesn't matter. The restaurant opens tomorrow. They can come to the restaurant for dinner, but there will be no discount. Bufang said. After that, he rose to his feet and prepared to leave the restaurant. Luo Sanyang followed him. She did not mind. Although Bufang was only a spirit divine chef, as a divine chef who could break the inheritance seal, his restaurant could not be that bad. Bufang did not go back to his restaurant. Instead, he boarded Luo Sanyang's warship and returned to the divine chef temple. He had eaten and drunk. Bufang was satisfied. The dishes of those earth divine chefs naturally had their own extraordinary qualities. However, Bufang was confident in his dishes. He was confident that he could fight his way out of the restaurant industry, which was controlled by many earth divine chefs. They returned to the divine chef temple. Luo Sanyang brought Bufang to the place where the inheritance was sealed. There was more than one inheritance seal. There were many seals. Although Bufang had broken one, there were many more. That was why the divine chef temple valued Bufang so much. After all, it was not that easy to break the inheritance seal of an ancient heaven god. This is the second layer of the seal. After the first layer of the seal has been broken, the second layer of the seal has appeared. Luo Sanyang leaned against the railing, pointing at the seal in the distance as she spoke in a languid manner. Her beautiful eyes flickered slightly as she looked at Bufang. Would you like to give it a try, Mr. Bu? She said with a smile. Try the second seal? Bufang frowned and looked at it seriously. I'll let the others try first. Luo Sanyang smiled without waiting for Bufang's reply. Then he called out to a spirit divine chef in the distance. Without hesitation, the divine chef walked straight to the seal. When the first seal was broken, the tests were gone, so these divine chefs had nothing to do in the past few days. And now, the second layer of the seal had appeared. They were all rubbing their fists, eager to give a try. The spirit divine chef stood in front of the seal. Soon, the divine sense in his mind was mobilized. As spirit divine chefs, they were basically demigods. Of course, there are also some who were god-level experts. The divine chef chosen by Luo Sanyang was a god. He was a divine chef who had comprehended the power of law. His divine sense surged and quickly collided with the power of the seal. Boom! Then the god opened his eyes. A unique aura seemed to be released from the inheritance seal and instantly spread across the entire area. Buzz! A large group of divine chefs was watching. They were all very curious about the unknown second seal. A number emerged over the inheritance seal. It was somewhat similar to the first seal. The number began to jump. It became 1. Then, after a few breaths, it began to jump. Finally, when it reached 100 suddenly, the divine chef opened his eyes, which turned red and bloodshot in an instant. Slash! The divine chef's body began to shake violently like a sieve. Blood oozed out of his 7 orifices. The appearance of this scene caused everyone to panic. Bufang could not help but furrow his brows. Luo Sanyang's calm eyes narrowed. Her figure disappeared on the spot, as if she had teleported, and when she reappeared, it was as if she had teleported. When she reappeared, she was right in front of the inheritance seal. She raised her slender hand and placed it on the divine chef's body. She sucked in a breath of cold air. A pressure that seemed to have descended from the 9 heavens suddenly smashed into Luo Sanyang's body. Luo Sanyang's face turned pale in an instant. The hand on the divine chef's body loosened, as if it was pricked by a needle. He quickly retreated a few steps and leaned against the wall. The divine chef's body trembled and became stiff. Then he fell to the ground with a thud. The impact kicked up a cloud of dust. Everyone was stunned. What happened? How could a god fall just like that? The surrounding divine chefs felt their blood run cold. Such a situation was something that they rarely encountered, and this time, it made them a little flustered. Could it be that there was danger in breaking the inheritance seal? Bufang landed on the ground and walked up to the divine chef. His divine sense surged. The spirit divine chef fell to the ground, his eyes wide and filled with confusion. Clearly, he did not understand how he died. His divine sense has collapsed, and his spirit sea is gone. Bufong retracted his divine sense and sucked in a breath of cold air. The way he died was a little miserable. It wasn't that easy for a god to die, but a mere legacy seal had actually caused one of them to perish. Luo Sanyang rose to her feet. Clearly, the situation was somewhat beyond her expectation. Is he dead? Luo Sanyang's complexion returned to normal. Her face recovered a little, but it still looked a little ugly. She had just wanted to test the inheritance seal before asking Bufong to intervene. But now, it seemed that the seal was still dangerous. Since it was dangerous, she could not let Bufong intervene easily. Bufong was very important, and he could not die like this. Mr. Bu, don't touch the inheritance seal for the time being. Report what happened here to the higher-ups first. This is the first time this has happened. Luo Sanyang took a deep breath and said. The surrounding divine chefs were a little panicked. A god had died because he was trying to break the inheritance seal. In that case, would they still dare to break the inheritance seal? They did not dare to. They were weaker than gods. Even a god had been crushed. What qualifications did they have to touch the seal? Luo Sanyang's mind was in a mess at the moment. After warning Bufong, she turned and could not wait to leave. The death of a god-level divine chef was not a trivial matter. The divine chef temple had invited many divine chefs this time. However, there were not many divine chefs at this level. The earth divine chefs and spirit divine chefs were all worried, and they stopped studying the inheritance seal. Since it was a matter of life and death, they were naturally afraid. Luo Sanyang turned and left. However, before she could reach the door, cries of alarm came from behind her. The uproar caused Luo Sanyang's body to tremble slightly. She jerked her head around. Then he saw Bufong standing in front of the inheritance seal without him noticing. What? Luo Sanyang's pupils constricted. The surrounding divine chefs had the same reaction as her. This is crazy. He knows that a divine chef is dead, but Bufong still dares to break the inheritance seal. He doesn't take life and death seriously at all. The crowd cried out in alarm. However, at this moment, Bufong could no longer hear what they were shouting. His mind had fallen into the inheritance seal. It was the second seal. Unlike the first seal, this one was very heavy. When Bufong's mind sank into it, an old voice rang out. The wok-tossing art of affliction, rumble. A heavy black wok appeared in front of Bufong's eyes. The black wok appeared there, as if it was going to crush the void, filling everyone's vision. Bufong furrowed his brows. In his divine sense, the black wok was like an endless black hole. It seemed to be devouring his divine sense all the time. After a long time, Bufong sensed the task of breaking the second seal. In fact, it was somewhat similar to the task of breaking the first seal. There are also 3 small tasks. The first one was tossing the wok 999 times within half an hour. Tossing the wok? Bufong took a deep breath. His mind flickered. Immediately, his mind seemed to enter a mysterious space. A black wok emerged in front of him. In it, there was sand that looked like diamond dust. Bufong reached out a hand and grabbed the wok. Immediately, he felt an unparalleled weight. The black wok seemed to crush the void, and Bufong could not lift it with one hand. He grabbed it with both hands at the same time, and only then did he manage to lift it. His divine sense wrapped around it. As his divine sense kept flowing away, Bufong felt that the black wok had become much lighter. However, it also consumed a lot of his divine sense. No wonder that divine chef's divine sense collapsed and he died. Bufong guessed that he had used all his divine sense on tossing the wok. The wok-tossing technique of affliction should not be much weaker than the kitchen knife of affliction. After completing the task, he should be able to comprehend the divine ability. At the thought of the rarity of divine abilities, Bufong's eyes lit up. Without hesitation, his divine sense wrapped around the wok. Boom! His arms suddenly exerted force, and the yin and yang Taotai souls in his Taotai arm seemed to let out angry, bestial roars. Dragon-like muscles covered it. Bufong grabbed the black wok with both hands. He tossed the wok in the orthodox way. Rumble. The mouth of the wok was pushed forward, causing the black wok to collide with the stove, producing a clanging sound. Then, the fine diamond sand in the black wok surged up with a crashing sound. It rolled up like a wave, and when it fell down, it smashed into the black wok. Like a thunderclap, a rumbling sound rang out. Tossing the wok once, Bufong exhaled softly. He felt that some of his divine sense was sucked away. That made Bufong's eyes slightly narrow. Every time he tossed the wok, some of his divine sense would be sucked away. If he tossed the wok 999 times, the amount of divine sense sucked away would be tremendous. An ordinary person's divine sense might not be able to withstand it. No wonder that Divine Chef's divine sense was sucked away. Outside, looking at Bufong's motionless figure, everyone was a little frightened. A number emerged above the inheritance seal over Bufong's head. Everyone looked at the number in horror, feeling that it was a death warrant. Back then, when the number jumped to 100, that god had suddenly died. Could Bufong hold on? She held her breath and stared at the number. Bufong's rash action had made her a little flustered. However, no matter how flustered she had to face reality. She could only hope that Bufong could survive. She had no idea how dangerous the ancient heaven god's inheritance seal was. The number jumped. 10, 20, 30. Soon, the number changed again. Buzz. Finally, it turned into the 100 that killed that divine chef. The number reached 100. Everyone held their breaths as they stared fixedly at Su and Mo. When the number reached 100, Bufong's movements and expression changed abruptly. Chapter 1438. The wok-tossing art of affliction. In fact, wok-tossing was a necessary skill for all chefs. Basically, every chef was very familiar with it. Wok-tossing was the foundation, and it was the first skill one had to learn at the beginning of cooking. But in the days that followed, chefs did not pay so much attention to it. Very few people would go out of their way to learn it. Bufong was very surprised to see the wok-tossing skill in the inheritance seal this time. However, Bufong would not ignore it. The wok-tossing art of affliction was a technique that was directly reflected in Bufong's mind. Bufong only needed to perform it according to the technique in his mind. Swish! The diamond-like sand and stones fluttered in the air, sparkling with a bright light. As the number of wok tosses increased, Bufong felt the pressure on his divine sense growing stronger. It was like a millstone was spinning, exerting great pressure on his divine sense and crushing it. She stared at Bufong. She could feel the change in Bufong's aura, and it made her shudder. The change frightened her, and she was worried that Bufong would die suddenly like the previous divine chef. If that happened, it would be a great loss for the divine chef temple. 100. It was a very sensitive number. However, it did not stay there for long, and soon it was replaced by a new number. Seeing the change in the numbers, everyone couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief, and their minds relaxed. There was no doubt that Bufong did not die suddenly when the number reached 100 like the previous divine chef. This made many people feel much more at ease. However, they did not relax. If he did not die suddenly at 100, he might die suddenly at another number. They did not know what Bufong and the previous divine chef had gone through. Perhaps it was the same as the test of the first seal. It was all about how many times he had to swing the knife. However, these were just their guesses. They could only wait for Bufong to complete the test before they could know the specific news. The number kept changing. Soon, it jumped to 200, and it did not stop. It kept going up. 300, 400, 500. The change in the numbers caused everyone's heart to tense up. That string seemed like it would snap at any moment. 800. Stop. The previous one died at 100, as expected of the person who broke the first inheritance seal. He is indeed a monster. The surrounding divine chefs gradually broke free from their fear and became much calmer. They started to exclaim, shocked by Bufong's strength. 990. Everyone saw that Bufong's face had turned pale. 999. Boom. Just as the number jumped to 999, everyone's eyes couldn't help but freeze. Then, a strange energy wave spread out, filling the entire area. Voila! Bufong, who had been as steady as a rock, moved. His body swayed for a while, and his pale face suddenly turned red. After completing the small task, the drained divine senses were quickly fed back into Bufong's spirit sea. Moreover, the strength of the divine senses that were fed back seemed to have increased by a level. Bufong paused for a moment as he sensed his much stronger divine sense. Originally, his divine sense could only cover a range of 10 miles, which was already the level of most mid-grade gods in the divine dynasty's capital. After the nourishment, Bufong's divine sense could cover a range of 100 miles. This level of divine sense had long surpassed the realm of demigods. The pressure of the divine sense faded away. The pressure that shrouded everyone's hearts gradually spread out. Everyone stared at Bufong with fanaticism. Bufong was not dead. He had survived the test of the second inheritance seal. Luo Sanyang's figure flickered and appeared in front of him. She stared at Bufong with a worried and excited look on her face. She was worried that something might happen to Bufong. She was excited because Bufong had survived the test. "How are you? Do you feel any discomfort?" she asked quickly. At the same time, the other divine chefs swarmed over and surrounded Bufong in an instant. They were also very curious about what Bufong had gone through. Bufong's face was calm. He still had the wok-tossing spell of affliction in his mind. However, he could not use it in reality. Obviously, without completing all the tasks, Bufong could not complete the wok-tossing spell of affliction. He exhaled softly. Then, he glanced at the people around him. Bufong told them what he knew. When he mentioned the wok-tossing spell of affliction, everyone went crazy. That was a divine power. To comprehend a divine power, one had to become a god king or comprehend the supreme law of the universe. But now there was a shortcut. That was to comprehend from the inheritance seal. This was an opportunity for everyone present. Even Luo Sanyang was a little tempted. However, she knew that she was not a chef and could not comprehend that divine power. A friendly reminder, this test is very dangerous, and ordinary people had better not try it. Otherwise, you will end up like that divine chef. Bufong said seriously. He felt that he had to emphasize this point. Luo Sanyang's face grew serious. If even Bufong said it was dangerous, then it should be really dangerous. However, Luo Sanyang did nothing to stop him. She glanced at the crowd. When these divine chefs learned that Bufong could comprehend a divine power, they were so excited that they could not listen to anything else. The temptation of a divine power was too great for them. Bufong did not say anything. He clasped his hands behind his back and left. The test was divided into 3 stages. The first stage was to toss the wok 999 times. The second stage was to toss the wok 9,999 times. The third stage was to toss the wok 99,999 times. Every mission was different, and the difficulty of the test would increase exponentially. Bufong could pass the first stage, but Bufong did not have the slightest confidence to toss the wok 9,999 times in the second stage. So, Bufong did not choose to continue the test. Instead, he left. In any case, the tests of the 3 stages did not overlap. As long as he completed one of the tests, he could continue the test. However, he was not allowed to fail. Once he failed, his divine sense would collapse, and in serious cases, he would die. Luo Sanyang and Bufong left. Bufong went straight to his luxurious room. He needed a rest. As for Luo Sanyang, she went to the divine chef temple's higher-ups. Such an important matter naturally needed to be explained clearly. The next day it was just dawn. Bufong, who had been sitting cross-legged all night, slowly opened his eyes. His slightly swollen divine sense had recovered, and Bufong breathed a sigh of relief. Bufong needed time to get used to the sudden strengthening of his divine sense. So, he spent the whole night consolidating it. He rose to his feet, stretched his back, and heard the system's serious voice in his head. "Attention, host. The restaurant's renovation has been completed." The renovation has been completed? This did not surprise Bufong. He wondered what style the system would decorate the restaurant into. According to the system's character, it should not be a gorgeous style. It might be very simple. He pushed the door of his luxurious room open. Bufong walked out of the room. His face was indifferent as he walked along the wide avenue of the distinguished guest tower. The divine chef temple was quiet. This made Bufong feel a little strange. However, he soon realized that these divine chefs must have learned about the inheritance seal, so they had all gone to try it. Naturally, Bufong could not stop them. The temptation of the divine power was too great. All Bufong could do was wish them good luck. Luo Sanyang did not appear. Bufong got into the dragon chariot. The coachman flicked his whip, and the chariot sped away. It did not last long. Soon, Bufong came to Luo Sanyang's property, which was the skyscraper. He had said that the restaurant would be open today. He stepped into the skyscraper. The light of the transportation array flashed, and Bufong soon came to the top floor. The restaurant's door was locked. With his hands clasped behind his back, Bufong came to the door. A clanging sound rang out. The metal doors of the restaurant, which were engraved with mysterious patterns, suddenly emitted a rumbling sound and slowly opened to both sides. Bufong's eyes lit up. He stepped into the restaurant. As soon as he stepped inside, he was shocked by the brand-new renovation style. It was completely different from the previous restaurant. Compared with the previous restaurant, it was much more luxurious and luxurious. Transparent floor-to-ceiling windows, golden bricks, glazed tiles, upright floor lamps, and small table lamps that emitted a dim yellow light. Wait, compared with the previous restaurant, this one had a different style. There were not many seats in the restaurant, for tables were placed close to each other. With his hands clasped behind his back, Bufong walked around the restaurant, taking in the brand-new renovation style as if he was admiring it. Nothing in the kitchen had changed much. Xiaobai was already standing at the kitchen door, waiting for Bufong. Overall, Bufong was satisfied with the renovation. It was rare for the system to be so generous as to make such a renovation. The restaurant also had a small balcony. That was because it was located on the top floor. There were a few chairs on the balcony. Bufong pulled a chair over and leaned against it. As he felt the warm breeze caressing him, a satisfied look appeared on his face. After a long time, Bufong breathed a sigh of relief. It was time to open the restaurant. Bufong still remembered the system's temporary task very clearly. He was to open a branch in the Xiai Divine Dynasty's capital. There was also a temporary task reward. In other words, it was a fruit of law. A fruit of law. At the thought of the fruit of law, Bufong's eyes lit up. After eating the fruit of law, he wandered in the sea of law and comprehended the law of transmigration. He wondered if eating another fruit of law would help him smoothly break through to the God realm. Ting-a-ling, suddenly, a sound came from outside the door. The restaurant's door opened automatically. Luo Sanyang and several figures walked in. Bufong was slightly taken aback. "Mr. Bu, we're here to support you. How can it be so quiet on the opening of a new restaurant?" Luo Sanyang said to Bufong with a smile from a distance. She was followed by a group of people. Their auras fluctuated and their eyes were bright. Clearly, they were not ordinary people. Luo Sanyang came to Bufong's side. Looking at Bufong, who was curled up in a chair, she narrowed her eyes and smiled. Suddenly, her face became serious. "Owner Bu, the information you asked me to find out, I found something." Bufong, who had risen from the chair, paused for a moment. Then he focused his eyes and looked at Luo Sanyang. Luo Sanyang did not seem to know how to answer the question. She looked a little hesitant. "The result is not good news. Does Mr. Bu still want to know?" Chapter 1439. The result of the investigation is not good news. "Mr. Bu, do you still want to know?" Luo Sanyang stared straight at Bufong and said seriously. Bufong could feel that she was not joking. Immediately, Bufong's eyes became sharp. "Not good news? Then it's bad news. Did something happen to Lord Go and the others?" Bufong stared at Luo Sanyang and motioned for her to continue. Seeing Bufong's expression, Luo Sanyang understood that Bufong wanted to know the news. She sighed softly. Luo Sanyong furrowed her pretty brows. Owner Bu, you asked me to investigate a dog and 2 people, right? She asked. Bu Fong nodded his head, his face solemn. I can't find anything about the dog, but I did find something about those 2 people, Luo Sanyong sighed. Obviously, the bad news was also about those 2 people. They are related to the Mo family, one of the top aristocratic families in the Divine Dynasty. Luo Sanyong looked at Bu Fong. There are 3 top aristocratic families in the Divine Dynasty: the Luo family, the Mo family, and the Zhao family. The Zhao family is Zhao Wuhan's family. Although Zhao Wuhan is ignorant and incompetent, his family background is very strong. The Luo family is my family, and it has some status in the Divine Dynasty. As for the Mo family, it is the most ferocious of the 3 families. Luo Sanyong gave Bu Fong some general knowledge. Bu Fong nodded. What does this have to do with you and the others? I told you before that there are many geniuses among the heirs of the aristocratic families, right? But, in fact, there are many stupid and crazy people in the aristocratic families. They don't have the talent of the heirs, but they also pursue the ultimate power. Your friend was captured by such lunatics from the Mo family, Luo Sanyong said with a sigh. It was not a good thing to be captured by that crazy guy from the Mo family. Bu Fong's friend was really sad. Bu Fong's face turned cold. Where's the Mo family? Bu Fong asked indifferently. He did not want to say too much. He had to save you in Hades' era. Bu Fong did not know where the Lord Go was. Now that he knew where you and Hades' era were, how could Bu Fong sit back and do nothing? Besides, you have a special identity. Mu Hongzi had reminded Bu Fong before. However, Bu Fong did not expect that he would be separated from you and the others as soon as he arrived at the capital. Are you really going to interfere? As for your 2 friends, there's nothing much to say about the man, but the woman is a cursed goddess, and the power of her curse has completely broken out. Now that she has fallen into the hands of the Mo clan, the odds are against her. Luo Sanyong frowned. Tell me where the Mo clan is, Bu Fong asked with a straight face. Luo Sanyong opened her mouth. She seemed to sense the firmness in Bu Fong's tone. She did not know what to say. Bu Fong might not understand how terrifying the Mo clan was, and even the Luo clan did not want to fight them. The people of the Mo clan were too crazy. Or rather, they were too terrifying. It was not their talent that was scary, but their will to become stronger. Is that woman so important to you? Are you willing to offend the Mo clan? Luo Sanyong relaxed her frown and looked at Bu Fong. Bu Fong's eyes were as dark as the night sky, full of stars. He glanced at her, took a deep breath, and said solemnly, "Because they're my friends." Luo Sanyong trembled, but she had no choice but to nod. Okay, I understand. The next moment, she rubbed the spot between her brows. You're really a troublemaker. You've just caused trouble in King Pingyang's residence, and now you're going to the Mo clan. If you keep acting like this, you'll be killed sooner or later in the Divine Dynasty, Luo Sanyong said helplessly. The experts behind Luo Sanyong were all friends that Luo Sanyong had found. With her power, it was easy for her to summon a group of friends. However, Bu Fong was going to the Mo clan now. Luo Sanyong could not make them stay in the restaurant, so she had to apologize and let them leave. Meanwhile, Bu Fong closed the restaurant's door. He stepped on a Luo Sanyong's luxurious warship. On the first day of its opening, the restaurant in the Divine Dynasty's capital did not make a single customer and closed its doors. The atmosphere in the luxurious warship was somewhat gloomy. Luo Sanyong did not say a word. She just steered the warship forward. A ripping sound rang out. The warship streaked across the sky, tearing through the sky of the capital. A rumble echoed out. The warship shook slightly. Then it stopped and landed on the ground. It was a huge square where warships were docked, which belonged to the aristocratic families. In the Divine Dynasty's capital, warships were a means of transportation and a symbol of face. Every heir of an aristocratic family had a luxurious warship of his own. Bu Fong stepped out of the warship. He followed Luo Sanyong with his hands at his sides. After walking around for a while, the two of them arrived in front of a mansion. The front door of the mansion was decorated magnificently. The Mo clan. Bufong's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at the plaque in front of the door. You, in Hades' era, are inside. Bufong took a deep breath and said. Luo Sanyang nodded. The Mo clan is hosting a banquet today for your friend. Every time they do something crazy, they will hold a grand banquet to make it look ceremonial. Although many people in the capital resent it, they are, after all, the Mo clan, and many families will give them face. Also, I have some bad news for you. Luo Sanyang looked at Bufong and said, the fifth prince of the Divine Dynasty's capital is also in the Mo clan, and he has taken a fancy to that woman. After the Mo clan devours her cursed power, he will bring her back to the imperial palace. What do you mean? Bufong frowned, and his eyes became more and more serious. The fifth prince is a notorious lecher in the Divine Dynasty's capital. That means your friend will not end well. Of course, if you want to save your friend, you will have to fight against the Mo clan and the fifth prince. Luo Sanyang smiled bitterly. She felt that Bufong had really gone crazy. In this kind of situation, once he tried to save someone, it would basically be a dead end. She didn't know where Bufong got his confidence from, even though Bufong had defeated the young master. However, the young master was only a demigod. Even if he was a genius demigod, he would be crushed by a mid-grade god, even if he was the top expert among mid-grade gods. Moreover, there were many high-grade gods in the Mo clan. Once Bufong stepped through the gate, he would definitely die. She didn't understand why Bufong had to do this. Bufong understood her pain. She was, after all, a member of the Luo clan, and he couldn't involve himself too much in it. So, Bufong didn't ask her to help him. I'll save her, and you'll pick me up with a warship. The Divine Chef Temple can keep me safe, right? Bufong asked seriously. Luo Sanyang nodded. In the Divine Chef Temple, Bufong was absolutely safe. That was all she could do. All right, wait for me, Bufong said. As soon as he finished speaking, with hands clasped behind his back, he turned and stepped into the Mo clan's residence, his figure gradually disappearing through the gate. Luo Sanyang breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at Bufong's determined back, she suddenly regretted telling Bufong the news. She might have harmed Bufong. Perhaps she should have kept this secret in her heart from the beginning. The opening ceremony of this restaurant was really inauspicious for Bufong. However, what had already happened, so she didn't say anything more. In the Mo clan's residence, clad in his striped red and white vermilion robe, Bufong walked slowly into the hall with his hands clasped behind his back. His expression was indifferent. He was neither in a hurry nor slow, even though he knew that Hades' era and you were in danger. However, the Mo clan is holding a banquet to create a sense of ceremony, so I don't think they will deprive you of the curse so early. If she lost the power of the curse, she would fall into a state of absolute weakness, and she might even die. Of course, Bufong couldn't just stand by and watch it happen. The Mo clan's residence was full of people. All kinds of people were mingling in it. Some were the nobles of the Divine Dynasty, and some were the sons of aristocratic families. They were drinking and chatting with each other, talking and laughing. There was wine and food, and a rich aroma filled the air. Bufong was very inconspicuous among these people. After all, he was wearing a chef's robe, and in the eyes of the guests, he might just be a chef of the Mo clan. Of course, there were also some experts who had stayed in King Pingyang's residence, and they found Bufong somewhat familiar. However, they couldn't recognize him immediately. Bufong kept a low profile. He was here to save people, and it would be difficult for him to strike if he was too high profile. Besides, Bufong didn't plan to fight them head-on from the beginning. As she had said, the Mo clan was guarded by a high-grade god. Although Bufong could fight a mid-grade god, he could only be crushed by a high-grade god. He shuttled through the crowd. Soon, Bufong came to the backyard. It was much quieter here. It was also more convenient for Bufong to act. Of course, the point was that Bufong needed to know where you and Hades' era were. Bufong didn't dare to use his divine sense rashly, for fear of attracting attention. Frowning, Bufong pondered. Suddenly, his ears twitched. With his current strength, his hearing and eyesight had been greatly improved, so it was easy for him to hear or see anything. Some of the maids around him seemed to be discussing something shyly and timidly. Bufong listened confidently. He found that these maids seemed to be talking about a man. A very handsome man. Handsome? Bufong raised his eyebrows slightly, and his expression became a little strange. A man? Silently, he followed behind a gorgeously dressed servant girl who was swaying her hips. The maid came to a small building in front of the Mo clan. A group of maids had already gathered in front of the building. Holding melon seeds in their hands, these maids gathered at the door and peered inside. From time to time, they would smile and push each other. It was a very pleasing sight. Big sister, I heard that the Mo clan is holding a banquet today. Are there any chili strips? Can I have one for I? Don't you know about chili strips? It's the kind that is thin and long. When you put it in your mouth, it goes in and out. I-oh. Big sister, give I a chili strip, and I will agree to elope with you. Really, I promise with my character that I will never lie. His ears twitched. A noisy voice entered Bufong's ears. Bufong was a little surprised because he found this voice familiar. His eyebrows twitched. Hades Era? Such a crazy desire for chili strips. Apart from Era, there should be no one else. The once high and mighty Hades Era had actually fallen to deceive a group of ignorant maids? Where was this guy's moral integrity? The corners of Bufong's mouth twitched. He was still thinking about how to find Hades Era, but in the end it didn't take him much effort. Bufong suddenly hesitated, wondering if he should save this guy. Chapter 1440. Hades Era seemed to be living a comfortable life. Bufong looked at the group of beautiful maids and couldn't help but exhale. Then, he slowly walked out from behind the maids. The maidservants were startled, and they all looked at Bufong in horror. Who's there? These maids are the ones who were responsible for guarding Hades Era. Therefore, the moment they saw Bufong, the maidservants all became vigilant. Although they were maidservants, they were still guards of the Mo family. Hades Era's voice came to an abrupt halt. Bufong saw Era's appearance. This guy was tied up on the bed. His freedom was restricted, and the aura on his body was also sealed. As if he had sensed a familiar aura, Hades Era became excited. Bufong, young man, is that you? I know it's you. You have the familiar aura of a spicy strip. Don't be shy. Come here, and let I have a look. Hades Era screamed. That made the maids even more vigilant. Could it be that this man's accomplice had come? All of a sudden, the pupils of the maids shrank. That's because they felt a terrifying power suddenly descend. It was as if a mountain was pressing down on their bodies, making it difficult for them to move. The oppressive aura made their souls tremble. Who's there? A demigod maidservant shouted. She was the leader of these maidservants. Tap, tap. The clear sound of footsteps rang out. A skinny figure clasped his hands behind his back as he walked out of the door. His speed was neither fast nor slow. The maidservant's gazes immediately turned and landed on that person. The half-god realm maid's eyes shrank. Her divine sense surged, trying to break free from Bufong's restraint. Don't mess around, Bufong said calmly. Buzz, his spiritual sense moved slightly, and like a wheel that could crush everything, it suddenly pressed down. The demigod maidservant immediately collapsed to the ground, unable to even move a finger. Bufong's divine sense was far higher than the demigod realm. All the maids in the room were the same, unable to move at all. Bufong walked over to the bed, his eyes indifferently looking at Nether King Erha, who was tied up tightly on the bed. Zhang Xian thought. The invisible divine fire appeared, and the ropes engraved with runes immediately snapped. Hades Era quickly broke free and got up from the bed. Bufong, young man, you came at the right time. We have to save Nethery. Hades Era shook his body and looked at Bufong solemnly. Where? Bufong narrowed his eyes. As soon as he finished speaking, Hades Era took the lead and dashed toward the exit. Bufong followed him. The moment Bufong walked out of the room, His divine sense suddenly shook like a huge bell. Buzz, the maidservants felt as if their heads had suffered a huge blow, and they all fainted. Nether King Air hopped past through the mansion at an extremely fast speed. After a while, Hades Era brought Bufong to a room. "It's here." All he wanted was the power in the woman. As for the woman, he didn't care. There were thousands of beautiful women in the world, so how could he offend the fifth prince for a woman? However, in his heart, he still somewhat despised the lecherous fifth prince. There were so many princes in the imperial family, but the fifth prince was the most ignorant, incompetent, and the most useless. All the other princes cultivated like crazy in order to be able to compete with the crown prince. Only the fifth prince was obsessed with beauty and could not extricate himself. Dong, 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 the top floor of the guest building, the bell rang. Emohen's face froze. He stepped onto the top floor and stood on the top floor, looking at the sparkling artificial lake. He was a little excited. What he had been looking forward to for a long time was finally about to begin. Emohen's cultivation talent was average, and the reason he could have his current status in the Mo family was because of his business talent. However, this kind of business talent could not be used to make a living, and it could never improve his status in the Mo family. Therefore, Emohen planned to find another way. While running the Mo family's business for many years, he had also been studying some other methods. That was to transfer some of the power of talented people into his own body. He had spent countless source stones and manpower to study this method, and he had finally completed it. His talent was about to change, and his status was bound to rise. It was only a matter of time before he became the number one person in the Mo family. Emohen's eyes were full of excitement. The surrounding guests were also drinking and looking in the direction of the artificial lake. Buzz, suddenly, there was a rumble. The artificial lake began to ripple. As if it had been cut open by a knife, a crack suddenly appeared in the center of the lake. The lake water, like a waterfall, poured down toward the crack, rumbling and shaking. All the guests looked at this scene in shock. This beautiful scene could make people sink into it. Boom! Under the whole artificial lake, a huge formation emerged. This array formation was carved by Emohen when he ordered people to construct it. He found this formation in an ancient book, a method to strip from the body of a fierce beast. It could absorb people's strength and talent to strengthen the body. Although the ancient book was vague, the formation was still very clear. No matter what, Emohen had to try it. Rumble, soon, the water in the artificial lake began to swirl. It automatically formed a formation. The spectacular scene attracted the attention of countless people. Suddenly, in the middle of the cracked artificial lake, a cage slowly rose into the air. Everyone's eyes widened as they stared at the cage. There was a woman in the cage, a girl in a long black dress. Her hair spread out, and her eyes were cold, like a fairy above the ninth heaven, arrogant and indifferent. There was not the slightest flaw on her beautiful face. Thud! The fifth prince was so stunned that he couldn't even hold the wine glass in his hand. It fell to the ground, and the wine in the glass spilled all over the ground. Beautiful, truly too beautiful. The fifth prince was intoxicated. The surrounding guests were all stunned. In the capital of the divine dynasty, there were probably only a few women who could compare to this woman's beauty. The cage was made of ancient dark iron, which was extremely hard. Although the aura of the beautiful woman in the cage was strong, she was only a demigod. The dark iron cage sealed the power in the woman's body, making her look like an ordinary woman without the strength to truss a chicken. Emohen rushed out of the building. With one step, he rushed to the top floor. Grabbing the railing, he stared at you, who was in the center of the lake. A ferocious and longing smile appeared on his face. By the artificial lake, on the path, Hades Era and Bufong stood with their hands clasped behind their backs. They stared at the center of the lake, at you, who was imprisoned in the cage. Their eyes flashed. Boom! All of a sudden, the pupils of Hades Era and Bufong shrank. In the center of the artificial lake, the array began to spin. Emohen took a step forward and smashed down like a meteor. He smashed hard in front of the cage, splashing water everywhere. His eyes were fixed on Nethery, who was in the cage. Then, the corners of his mouth curved into a cold smile. "It's starting. Everything you have will belong to me." Emohen laughed excitedly. The array began to spin. Boom! 2 beams of black light burst out. You, who was imprisoned in the cage, was immediately covered by the black energy. A tearing pain suddenly spread through her body, and Yu's face turned very pale in an instant. Chapter 1441. A Cursed Goddess. There seemed to be flames burning in Emohen's eyes. His mind was trembling with excitement. As long as the array was activated, he would soon be able to transfer the curse power in the cursed goddess into his body and comprehend the law of curse. Since ancient times, there have been many cursed goddesses recorded in ancient books. However, every cursed goddess had a miserable fate. Some were used as cauldrons, while others were devoured by curses. It was as if they were cursed, and their fates were extremely miserable. This was all because the cursed goddesses could not master the power of curses. But he was different. Once Emohen comprehended the law of curse, his strength would continue to increase. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he would become a top genius among the younger generation, and he would even be able to compete with the crown prince. This was why he had been holding back his cultivation base and not breaking through to the god realm. He knew a lot of secrets, and becoming a demigod was the most important time to lay the foundation. Emohen was ambitious, and now he finally had the ambition that he had been waiting for. It was the curse goddess. He stared greedily and excitedly at the beautiful woman in the cage. The woman was beautiful, but her power was even more alluring. The deprivation was painful. Yu frowned, her face pale, but she clenched her teeth stubbornly and did not make a sound. The black energy, which seemed to be full of corrosive power, began to spread into Yu's body and began to erode and plunder the power in her. It felt as if her bones were being crushed inch by inch. An ordinary person would have already fainted from the pain. On the contrary, Emohen felt very comfortable. He felt as if he had fallen into a land of tenderness, feeling all kinds of small hands kneading him. The feeling was so ecstatic that he was a little intoxicated. Boom! Waves of air blasted out and rumbled in the void. Emohen could feel the mysterious curse power in the cursed goddess's body. Come on, give me all your curse power." Emohen's face was a little ferocious. On the guest tower, everyone was watching this scene. Everyone held their breath. If Emohen really completed all this, his status in the family would be reevaluated. Then Emohen's status in the Emo family would be reevaluated, and his status could even surpass the Emo family's heir. Many people's eyes flashed, and their minds were filled with thoughts. No one thought that Emohen would fail. As long as no one made trouble, Emohen's method of depriving the cursed goddess of her talent and integrating it into her body was bound to succeed. After all, this was the Missouri family estate, the Emo family's territory. Who would dare to cause trouble here? Even if the heir of the Luo family and the heir of the Zhao family were here, they probably wouldn't make a move. Because if they caused trouble, it was very likely that they would be kept here. Water splashed everywhere. It was as if a monstrous wave was about to soar into the sky. Suddenly, on the guest tower, someone's gaze suddenly froze, and he exclaimed. They raised their hands and pointed at the surface of the artificial lake in the distance. Many people's gazes also followed the direction of the person who cried out in alarm. There on the surface of the lake, there was a figure walking on the waves. The current of the man-made lake was extremely turbulent, and ordinary people could not control their own bodies at all. However, the appearance of the wave walker instantly became the focus of everyone present. Why would someone appear on the Emo family's artificial lake? Who was the intruder? Everyone present was slightly dumbfounded. That figure looks familiar. Is that person crazy? Is he going to destroy Mo Hen's plan? Crazy. This is the Mo family's residence. How dare he destroy the Mo family's matter? Isn't he courting death? On the guest tower, many people were whispering to each other, discussing spiritedly. They saw that figure clearly. It was a thin young man with a head full of black hair, constantly fluttering in the majestic water vapor. His eyes were extremely sharp. He took a step out. Suddenly, he soared into the air, and the waves scattered. Step by step, he resolutely walked toward the direction of the cage. Mo Hen was immersed in the joy of absorbing energy. Suddenly, he sensed a foreign aura. He opened his eyes, swept his gaze around, and saw the young man in the distance who was walking on the waves. All of a sudden, his heart suddenly became furious. How could someone dare to break into the Mo family's artificial lake without permission? Roar. It seemed to let out a roar. Mo Hen instantly crushed the jade talisman. There could be no mistakes in this ceremony. Fortunately, Mo Hen was prepared. After crushing the jade talisman, there was suddenly a sonorous sound in the Mo family's residence. Every aristocratic family was equipped with their own guards. These guards were all battle-hardened veterans with rich combat experience. Boom! The waves exploded. The whistling sound rang out. On the artificial lake, the waves were blasted to the sky. Several figures walked in the air, suddenly falling, blocking in front of the young man. They blocked the path of the thin young man, preventing him from continuing to approach Mo Hen and you. The atmosphere suddenly became a little strange. Many experts widened their eyes as they watched the scene unfold. Bu Feng's face was cold, without the slightest expression on his face. At a glance, he saw you. When he saw that you was actually in a cage, his heart suddenly became angry. When you frowned, Bu Feng's face became more and more indifferent. He walked on the waves, wanting to break the cage. No one could stop him. Boom! With one step, his figure suddenly galloped like a dragon. However, his figure was blocked by someone. The ones who stopped him were the Mo family's guards. There were 8 guards, 8 gods. Although they were only gods who had comprehended ordinary laws, their strength was enough to make a mid-grade god fear them. Mo Hen floated in the black energy pillar. His sharp eyes coldly locked on Bu Feng. No matter who you are, kill without mercy. Mo Hen shouted coldly, pointing his finger at Bu Feng. As soon as his voice rang out, the Mo family's guards made their move. 8 low-grade gods attacked at the same time. Their power was so strong that even the sky seemed to change slightly. A terrible rumble rang out like thunder. Boom! 8 spears, 8 gods. Boom! Divine power filled the sky. In an instant, 8 spears pierced through the air, shooting toward Bu Feng. The whistling sound tore through the sky like a thunderclap. The 8 guards, with cold faces, attacked at the same time. This scene caused everyone present to suck in a breath of cold air. All of them felt horrified. Some of them even had goosebumps. These well-trained guards were much more powerful than ordinary gods. The hearts of the people present palpitated. The young man who wanted to destroy the ceremony was dead for sure. How could he resist such a force? They all found that the young man's aura was only that of a demigod. How could a mere demigod resist 8 well-trained gods from aristocratic families? Soon, this demigod would bleed on the spot. The 8 spears flew at a low altitude, splashing water wherever they passed. Bu Feng watched indifferently. In a flash, the 8 spears seemed to have blocked all his escape routes. They wanted to kill him on the spot. Mo Hen sneered. I don't know who you are, but if you want to destroy my ceremony, you must die. Mo Hen's face was ferocious. He laughed excitedly. In the cage, Yu frowned, her face deathly pale. When she saw Bu Feng, she was slightly taken aback. She didn't expect to see Bu Feng here. Was it an illusion? No, it wasn't an illusion. Yu's dark eyes narrowed, and the dark green cursed power began to emerge from her body. Slowly, it merged with Mo Hen's body in the distance. The pain drained all the blood from her face. The excitement and expectation in Mo Hen's eyes grew thicker. Of course, Bu Feng saw it too. Inexplicable anger rose in his heart. He took a step forward. With his body as the center, a buzzing sound spread out. The boiling and noisy lake quieted down, without the slightest ripple. Everything in the surroundings was also extremely quiet. Only the sound of the 8 spears piercing through the air could be heard. A terrifying divine sense was released from Bu Fong's body. The impact of this divine sense made the 8 guards a little dazed. A clanging sound rang out. The 8 spears collided. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, Bu Fong had blocked all 8 spears. He grabbed 4 spears with each hand. He flung them down. The spears flew backward in an instant. They rolled up the water of the lake and turned into dragons that soared into the sky. Bu Fong stomped his feet on the ground and soared into the sky. He had to finish this battle quickly. He couldn't waste time. As soon as the dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand, a terrible dragon roar shook heaven and earth. The kitchen knife of affliction. Bu Fong's aura sword. All of a sudden, he seemed to have become 10,000 feet tall. The kitchen knife slashed down. A golden knife light shot out. In a flash, the 8 gods felt their hair stand on end. They didn't dare to be careless. They all unleashed their divine power, trying to block it. However, facing this knife, the 8 gods tried to block it at the same time, but they were all sent flying backward, vomiting blood. Their bodies were covered with cuts, and they were forced to kneel in the artificial lake with their heads bowed. With a boom, the lake water rose into the sky. The 8 flying spears turned into a long dragon and suddenly descended, piercing through their bodies and nailing them to the lake. One move. The 8 gods were defeated at the same time. They were dumbfounded. On the riverbank, Hades' era looked at the mighty Bu Fong and took a breath. How long has it been? How did Bu Fong young man's fighting prowess become so terrifying? He's a demigod, but he defeated 8 gods with one move. Is he really such a genius? On the guest tower, many experts were horrified. A demigod genius? He's a genius comparable to the heirs of aristocratic families. He defeated 8 gods with one move, but his cultivation base is only at the level of a demigod. I'm afraid even the heirs of aristocratic families can only reach this level. The experts' eyes widened in disbelief. The expressions of the experts from various families flickered. The 5th prince toyed with the jade bead in his hand. His eyes narrowed, while the old men around him closed their eyes and pondered. I know who he is. He's the chef who defeated young Master Pingyang in King Pingyang's residence. He's using his knife skills. He's a genius who comprehended the law of transmigration, the supreme law of the universe. Someone exclaimed and sucked in a cold breath as he recognized Bu Fong. But why did that chef come to the Mo family to cause trouble? He was lucky to escape the incident in King Pingyang's residence last time, and he was backed by the divine chef temple, so he was safe. But this time, he came alone without the divine chef temple's support. If the Mo family wanted to kill him, how could he stop them? A splashing sound rang out. Blood dyed the surface of a lake red. The 8 gods were thrown backward, bursting through the lake. Bu Fong stepped through the air and soared into the sky, heading straight for the cage. Mo Hen's eyes widened. How dare you? Even if you're a genius demigod, how dare you commit murder in the Mo family? That's a capital crime. Mo Hen's face was ferocious as he growled. He wanted to suppress Bu Fong with the might of the Mo family. The Mo family? Bu Fong glanced at Mo Hen with a straight face and twitched the corner of his mouth. He raised his hand. A black wok emerged over his palm. The black turtle constellation wok spun. Finally, Bu Fong grabbed it and smashed it toward Mo Hen's head. Chapter 1442. Bu Fong grabbed the black wok and instantly swung it down. His speed was extremely fast, and it whistled through the air. Mo Hen wanted to dodge, but he had no time to do so. The wok hit him in the face. A deafening rumble rang out. His figure was immediately sent flying out of the energy pillar by the wok. Accompanied by a whistling sound, he rapidly fell from the void and smashed into the artificial lake. Bufong held the black wok, his face indifferent. His face was expressionless as he looked at the dark iron cage that locked Nethery's body. He raised his hand and reached out to grab the iron cage. He wanted to crush the dark steel cage. However, what made Bufong surprised was that he actually didn't crush the dark steel cage. It was different from the one used to imprison Hua in King Pingyang's residence. Damn it, how dare you ruin my plan? In the artificial lake, a splashing sound rang out. Then, a figure emerged from the lake. His eyes were wide open, and they were filled with rage and madness. His face was twisted in a strange way, and blood was trickling down his face, which made him look even more ferocious. The cursed goddess is mine. Her power belongs to me. Mo Hen roared furiously. He was extremely unwilling to give up. The aura on his body continued to rise. He soared into the sky and charged toward Bufong. He was like a child whose toy had been taken away and was trying to get it back. Get lost. In the sky, Bufong gave Mo Hen an indifferent look. His divine sense came crashing down. Puff! Mo Hen's whole person was crushed alive, smashing down from a void. It was as if he had hit a boulder that weighed 10,000 pounds, and he could not even resist. The people around him sighed deeply. In the face of a top genius who had comprehended the law of transmigration, Mo Hen was too weak. After all, he was famous for his business talent in the Divine Dynasty, and his strength was indeed unflattering. Splash! In the artificial lake, Mo Hen climbed up and let out a crazy laugh from his mouth. At this moment, he also recognized the reality. In terms of combat power, he was indeed no match for Bufong. The difference in talent between the two of them was too great. He was a genius who had comprehended the supreme law of the universe, a lofty existence. It was not something he could compare to. But no matter how monstrous you are, you can't break this cage. Even if you break the cage, you won't be able to walk out of the Mo family. Mo Hen laughed, crazy and full of killing intent. The clanging sounds continued to ring out. The guards of the Mo clan came one after another. One by one, hundreds of guards, almost all the guards of the Mo clan, surrounded the man-made lake. With so many demigods and god guards working together, they formed a huge heavenly net that covered the entire sky. Bufong did not look at them. He didn't even care about them. His attention was focused on the cage. Yu's pain has lessened considerably since the formation has lost its effectiveness. She stared at Bufong with her dark eyes. Bufong nodded to Yu and said to Yu, "Step back a little." Yu immediately took a step back and pressed against the cage. Bufong's eyes narrowed. The yin and yang energy emerged on his arms. He grabbed the cage and exerted force. Immediately, the dark steel pillars of the cage were forcefully separated to the two sides. You can't break the cage. This is not ordinary iron. This is a cage made of refined iron. You can't open it unless you have my key. Mo Hen roared wantonly. He was sneering at Bufong for overestimating his own strength. In order to prevent the cursed goddess from escaping and being taken away by someone else, he had no choice but to do so. He even did not hesitate to build a cage made of refined iron just for this moment. He was very happy to see Bufong fail. However, there was a grinding sound that made one's teeth ache. Mo Hen's pupils constricted. The cage, which was made of black iron essence, let out a creaking sound as if it couldn't bear the weight anymore. Slowly it was bent. A gap was torn open. What kind of tremendous force was this? What kind of power was this? Mo Hen's pupils constricted. The next moment his anger surged. "Stop him!" Mo Hen roared. This was the first time he felt so irritable and out of control. The guards soared into the sky one after another. Among these guards, there were demigods and gods. All of them unleashed their formidable strength and rushed toward Bufong, trying to stop Bufong from breaking the cage. Bufong's Tao Tai arm continued to exert force. The yin and yang energy in his arm circulated to the extreme, constantly moving around his arm as if turning into a series of shadows. Rumble. A rumbling sound rang out. Cracks appeared on the dark steel cage. However, at this moment, the attacks of the guards also fell. Boom! In just a flash, Bufong's figure was swallowed up by countless attacks. Dazzling light filled the sky. On the guest tower, everyone's eyes were stunned. Some people even sucked in a breath of cold air. Could it be that a monster comparable to a young master had died, just like that? Emohen's eyes were full of madness. He was about to succeed, but monster had come out of nowhere and destroyed it. He hated these high and mighty monsters the most. With their enviable talents, they all looked down on others. The death of a monster made Emohen inexplicably excited. But was Bufong really dead? The guards floated in the void, staring at the cage. All of a sudden, they saw the light being torn apart. Bufong's figure stepped out of it unscathed. In the void, Yu quietly followed behind Bufong. Her black hair fluttered, and her face was extremely beautiful. Let's go. I'll take you to kill our way out. Looking at the guards around him, Bufong gently exhaled. He swung his hand. The mysterious iron essence cage in the void whistled as it ruthlessly smashed into the ground. With a bang, it smashed into the artificial lake, splashing water everywhere. Emohen stared at it, his eyes full of resentment and hatred. All of you attacked. Emohen roared crazily, looking like a crazy demon. He would not allow the opportunity that he had gotten into his hands to be given away like this. Boom, boom, boom. One expert after another approached Bufong. After all, Bufong was just one person. Even if he was a monster demigod, he would be powerless in the face of a group of gods and demigods. Terrible divine power swept across the sky. The guests on the guest tower watched with their blood boiling. This scene was too exciting. A demigod against 100 guards. It was like an epic confrontation. Even the crown prince and the young master would not be so crazy. It was too crazy. Could Bufong really do it? Even a demigod who had mastered the supreme law of the universe would die before he grew up. In the face of so many guards, Bufong let out a long breath. He turned to look at you. Do you want to follow me or enter the heaven and earth farmland? Bufong asked faintly. Nethery's eyes flickered as she narrowed them. I'll follow you. As soon as she said that, Bufong nodded. He turned his head and faced the guards in front of him. His mind flickered. The dragon bone kitchen knife emerged. His aura began to rise. In that case, I'll take you to kill our way out. Buzz, a silver flame emerged. It floated in front of Bufong. A moment later, it turned into thousands of flames, hovering around Bufong like a fire dragon. The dragon bone kitchen knife swept out. The knife light raged along with the silver flame. Its power was infinite, and even the void was twisting. The meteor knife technique burst out. In the sky, thousands of knife lights fell like meteors. The knife light was accompanied by the flame, and its power was extremely terrifying. Boom, boom, boom. The experts resisted with all their might. However, in the face of Bufong's attack, the demigods' bodies were instantly set ablaze. They turned into flaming men and were burned to ashes. Although the gods could resist, they were forced back. It was just one move. The first wave of the Mo family's guards was defeated. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Looking at the demigod guards in the sky that looked like fireworks, they all felt a chill run down their spines. In just a flash, the number of guards decreased sharply. Only 20-some god-level guards were left in the sky, blocking Bufong. Emohen's body was shaking. This scene was far beyond his expectation. He knew that to deal with a monstrous demigod, the price would be great. However, he didn't expect it to be so great. Bufong glanced around. The law of transmigration emerged above his head. His pressure sword and his aura sword. As soon as the law of transmigration appeared, Bufong's fighting prowess soared. The runes of law gathered and turned into a huge vortex. It smashed out. Immediately, the god guards who had surrounded Bufong retreated. Under the power of the law of transmigration, they were all suppressed. The Taotai arm bloomed with dazzling light. Bufong's fist fell from the sky. Boom! The bodies of several deities exploded, and they died miserably on the spot. The other gods fled at high speed. Even the young master of the Mo family could not withstand Bufong's yin and yang transmigration fist, let alone these low-grade gods. After repelling the guards, Bufong's body seemed to be burning with heat. He took you with him, walking step by step in the air. Gradually, they landed outside the man-made lake. One man and one punch had suppressed all the Mo family's guards. This was the power of a monstrous demigod. In the guest house, everyone sighed. The fifth prince toyed with the jade bead. Although a monstrous demigod is strong, he is, after all, just a demigod. He has too many restrictions. Does he really think that the Mo family, one of the top 3 families in the Divine Dynasty's capital, can come and go as he pleases? The corners of the fifth prince's mouth curved upward slightly as he said with a faint smile. The old man sitting beside him also slowly opened his eyes, revealing a glint in his eyes. Although Mo Hen was crazy, he had not lost his mind. He took a deep breath. The moment Bufong began his killing spree, he knew that this guy would not be able to walk out of the Mo family's residence. Once he began his killing spree, the experts in charge of the Mo family would make a move. What the aristocratic families cared about was their face. If they allowed Bufong to come and go as he pleased, they would certainly lose all their face. Rumble. Sure enough, when Bufong and Nethery landed on the shore, Bufong's eyes lit up. In the depths of the Mo family's residence, suddenly, a terrifying aura was drawn over. In the blink of an eye, several figures soared through the void, toward the sky, and emerged in midair. There were 3 old men, and behind them was a handsome young man. Their aura descended and sealed off the space around Bufong. The mid-grade gods of the Mo family had made a move. Chapter 1443. Rumble. Even the weakest mid-grade god had comprehended the power of 6 laws. It was already very difficult for a genius among demigods to fight a mid-grade god. Bufong had finally attracted the attention of the Mo family's mid-grade gods when he tore open the cage and slaughtered his enemies. 3 mid-grade gods appeared as soon as they appeared. Terrible divine pressure spread and seemed to form a sky curtain that was about to completely suppress Bufong. It was a very uncomfortable feeling. Even though Bufong's divine sense was very strong, it was still difficult for him to break through the suppression of the mid-grade gods. Hades' era sucked in a cold breath. It was the first time he felt such great terror. It was not until he came to the Divine Dynasty that he realized how weak the Netherworld was. In the face of these terrible existences, the Netherworld was as weak as a speck of dust. Of course, that did not include Mu Hongzi, who he could not see through. With a thought in his mind, Bufong took you and Hades' era into the heaven and earth farmland. If the mid-grade gods did not attack, Bufong might have the confidence to take them out. But once the mid-grade gods attacked, Bufong was not sure that he could guarantee the safety of you and Hades' era. Therefore, Bufong did not ask for you and Hades' era's opinion before taking them into the heaven and earth farmland. In the guest house, the experts had faint smiles on their faces. For them, the fall of a genius demigod was definitely something that could excite them. In fact, they were glad to see it happen. Usually, they were oppressed by those genius demigods. Now that they could see the fall of a genius, they were naturally very happy. Mo Hen looked wildly at Bufong. You're dead. How dare you break into the Mo family's residence and kill people? No one can save you. Mo Hen growled wildly. He looked very embarrassed. The failure of his plan was a great blow to him. This meant that his plan to change his talent had completely failed. Even a person who is usually incomparably calm became irritable at this moment. In the sky, the 3 old mid-grade gods glanced at Mo Hen and sighed. They knew what Mo Hen insisted on. Mo Hen just wanted to change her talent and become an existence comparable to a scion. Trash. The young man beside the 3 old men glanced at Mo Hen. When he saw the latter's crazy appearance, he curled his lips in disdain and said coldly, "The 3 pavilion elders don't need to do anything for the time being. Leave this guy to me." The young man said. The three elders looked at each other and nodded. Then, Crown Prince, be careful. It doesn't matter. I'd like to see how strong the genius who defeated King Pingyang's son is. The legendary law of reincarnation is so powerful. The young man let out a long roar, and the aura on his body rose steadily. His aura surged, and the power of laws surged above his head. Buzz, the young man, leaped into the air and faced Bufong. Whoosh, the wind was blowing. The youth was insufferably arrogant. I am Mo Tsong, the scion of the Mo family. The young man sneered, raised his hand, and aimed it at Bufong. If you submit to me, I can spare your life. Mo Tsong said to Bufong with a cold smile. His heart was on fire. If he could make a genius demigod submit to him, his status and reputation in the capital would certainly soar. He might even be able to suppress geniuses like the young master. Submit? Bufong's face was indifferent. He looked at Mo Tsong as if he was looking at an idiot, wondering where this guy's confidence came from. Suddenly, Mo Tsong's power of law surged. Bufong immediately felt his body become as heavy as a mountain. It was as if a towering mountain was pressing down on him. Boom! Boom! The ground under Bufong's feet collapsed in an instant. In midair, Mo Tsong sneered disdainfully. The law I comprehend is the law of gravity. How can you resist a gravity that is 100 or 1,000 times stronger? Step by step, Mo Tsong approached Bufong. One of his hands slapped toward Bufong from a distance. With every slap, Bufong felt the pressure on his body increase by a notch. In the distance, the experts in the guest house sucked in a cold breath. Even Mo Tsong had made a move. He was the heir of the Mo family, who was comparable to the young master. His mastery of the law of gravity was superb, and he could manipulate gravity 1,000 times stronger than normal. Mo Hen was extremely jealous. Didn't the Mo family value him because of his talent? Without talent, Mo Tsong was nothing. Mo Hen was unwilling. He had worked hard to help the Mo family earn countless resources, but in the end, these resources fell into Mo Tsong's hands and became the resources to cultivate him. How could he accept this? He was confident that if he had the same talent as Mo Tsong, he would definitely make a name for himself and dare to fight the young master. The three mid-grade gods were very satisfied with Mo Tsong's means. They looked at each other with smiles. Crown Prince is getting more and more proficient in using the law of gravity. Yes, Crown Prince is almost ready to break through to the god realm. Once he succeeds, he will have a good chance to become a perfected god in the future. If the Mo family can have one more perfected god, we will surely become the leader of all the aristocratic families in the divine dynasty. The hearts of the three mid-grade gods were a little agitated as they thought excitedly. Bufong's hair fluttered in the wind, and his eyes were as sharp as knives. The law of gravity? Bufong's face was expressionless. Raising his head, Bufong looked at Mo Tsong, who was laughing confidently in the sky. He twitched the corner of his mouth speechlessly. Even though he was carrying a gravity 1,000 times stronger than normal, Bufong was still very calm. He exhaled softly. The law of transmigration spun over his head. The runes of law enveloped his body. The terrible pressure of gravity disappeared in an instant. This was the overwhelming advantage of the supreme law of the universe over other laws. He clenched his fists. Then, Bufong's figure disappeared from where he was as if he had teleported. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Mo Tsong. That speed shocked Mo Tsong. How could you? This scene was out of everyone's expectations. They didn't expect that a gravity 1,000 times stronger than normal would have no effect on Bufong. The law of gravity? What kind of rubbish is that? Bufong said. As soon as he finished speaking, Mo Tsong's pupil shrank. A ripping sound rang out. Bufong clenched his Taodai arm into a fist and threw it out. A thud rang out. It hit Mo Tsong's abdomen without any resistance. Boom! Mo Tsong's eyes widened. For a moment, all his thoughts were gone. The punch made him spasm all over, and he couldn't even move a finger. With a thud, he fell from the sky and hit the ground. Bufong was speechless. Is this the heir of an aristocratic family? Is he so weak? Is this guy here to be funny? Everyone present was petrified, and the faces of the three old men twitched violently. Looking at Emo Tsang, who had fallen to the ground and was rolling like a worm, they immediately withdrew their previous evaluation of Emo Tsang. How dare you? How dare you act so violently in the Emo family? Surrender now. A mid-grade god bellowed, his eyes cold. He raised his palm. Divine power swirled. It turned into a huge palm that blotted out the sky and slapped down toward Bufong. They wanted to suppress Bufong. Even though Bufong was a genius who comprehended the supreme law of the universe, they were confident that they could suppress him. After all, they were not ordinary mid-grade gods. Each of them had comprehended 9 laws of heaven and earth. Waves of air burst out. They almost crushed everything in their path. Although the heir of the Emo family was funny, it didn't affect their dignity. Bufong's face froze. In the face of the descending mid-grade god's palm, Bufong let out a long roar. Waves of air rose into the sky in an instant. He threw out the yin and yang transmigration fist. He had forcefully blown up the palm strike. Even in the face of a mid-grade god, he was not afraid at all. The old men of the Emo family flew into a rage. Then, he brazenly attacked, clashing with Bufong. Rumbling filled the air as their divine power poured out. Bufong's face was cold as he kept throwing out yin and yang transmigration fists. He could not believe that he was fighting a mid-grade god to a standstill. He was a demigod, but he was not at a disadvantage when fighting a mid-grade god. Was this the power of a top genius? All the experts who witnessed the battle sucked in their breaths. Emo Hen, too, was filled with jealousy and horror. The fifth prince's eyes narrowed slightly. He leaned forward and said in surprise, "This chef has some strength." The old man who followed the fifth prince opened his eyes. The law of transmigration is a mysterious supreme law of the universe. It's extremely powerful, so it's not surprising that he can fight a mid-grade god. The old man said, "Hey, teacher, if I can have the help of a genius demigod, will I have a chance to fight the crown prince?" The fifth prince's eyes flickered as he thought of something. The old man glanced at him and shook his head. "Fifth prince, you don't know how terrifying the crown prince is. He's an absolute genius who is destined to become a god king. He might even have a chance to break through to the legendary heaven god realm. How can a mere demigod who comprehended the law of transmigration fight the crown prince? If the crown prince wants to kill him, one move is enough," the old man said disdainfully. The fifth prince did not take it seriously. The fifth prince did not mind. He just stared at Bufong and revealed a smile. "If this chef can survive, I'll reluctantly give him a chance to serve me." The fifth prince played with the jade bead and chuckled. Rumble. The void trembled. Bufong took a step back. However, the mid-grade god opposite him took several steps back. The latter was shocked, and there was anger in his eyes. But as the other 2 mid-grade gods also attacked, and in a flash, they surrounded Bufong. Their divine power exploded out. They gathered together, turned into a sky-blotting palm, and pressed down toward Bufong. It was going to crush Bufong. Bufong threw out a punch. The law of transmigration spread, but it could not break the palm. He was smashed down from the sky by the 3 old men and smashed hard on the ground. A rumbling sound rang out. The ground cracked. "Get on your knees." One of the mid-grade gods from the Emo family cried out, his eyes wide. His voice was like a thunderclap that shook everyone's mind. The terrifying pressure and crushing pressure made Bufong's entire body sore and painful. Bufong's face was expressionless. He glanced at the 3 mid-grade gods. With a thought in his mind, he was ready to let White Tiger strike. With his current strength, if White Tiger struck, blood would flow like a river. Suddenly, outside the Emo family's residence, a fearsome aura exploded out. A graceful figure appeared in an instant. She fell from the sky. The 3 mid-grade gods looked up, their pupils constricting slightly. Rumble. The 3 mid-grade gods retreated immediately and stopped suppressing Bufong. Then, the graceful figure descended, looking very charming. Luo Sanyang, the Luo family's she-devil. How dare you interfere in the Mo family's business? The Mo family's cabinet master bellowed. His anger soared, and his aura filled the air. Bu Fong, on the other hand, gave Luo Sanyang a puzzled look. He did not expect her to appear and save him. I knew you couldn't stop those old fellows from the Mo family, so I came, didn't I? Are you touched? If you are, treat me to a good meal when we get out of here. Luo Sanyang, who had a graceful figure, smiled at Bu Fong, looking very beautiful. Chapter 1444. Luo Sanyang's appearance was beyond Bu Fong's expectation, as well as the Mo family and everyone else's. However, some people also realized what was going on. They knew who Bu Fong was. Bu Fong was a chef of the Divine Chef Temple, and he was a chef that the Divine Chef Temple valued very much. Since he had helped the Divine Chef Temple break the first seal, he would naturally be valued by the temple. Although Luo Sanyang was a member of the Luo family, she was the steward of the Divine Chef Temple, so she naturally cared about Bu Fong. It was normal for her to come here and help Bu Fong. However, could Luo Sanyang really save Bu Fong? The Mo family was, after all, a top family in the Divine Dynasty's capital. Whether it was in terms of strength or power, it was a behemoth that ordinary people could not resist. Bu Fong was just a demigod. Luo Sanyang was just a mid-grade god. Elders of the Mo family, can you give the Divine Chef Temple some face? Bu Fong is a person that the Divine Chef Temple values. If something happens to him in the Mo family, the Divine Chef Temple won't be able to explain it. I don't think the Mo family wants to ruin our relationship with the Divine Chef Temple. Do you? Luo Sanyang said with a smile. She wanted to have a pleasant talk with the Mo family. Perhaps they would give the Divine Chef Temple some face. However, just as she finished speaking, the response she got was a cold snort from the three cabinet elders. The evil girl of the Luo family. Do you really think the Mo family is a pushover? You came to the Mo family, killed someone, and then said not to ruin our relationship with the Divine Chef Temple. And you think you can get away with it? What do you think the Mo family is? One of the elders said with a sneer, his eyes cold. Luo Sanyang paused slightly. You want to leave? Then asked that chef to hand over the woman he saved. Mo Hen said in a hoarse voice. His eyes flashed as he stared at Bu Fong. As long as he absorbed the cursed goddess's talent, he would be able to surpass this damn guy and even beat him to death. He would return the humiliation Bu Fong had given him 100 times, 1,000 times. Luo Sanyang was silent. She knew that Bu Fong had come here to save that woman. Mo Hen actually wanted Bu Fong to hand over the woman. Obviously, it was somewhat difficult. Luo Sanyang turned to look at Bu Fong. However, he found that Bu Fong shook his head expressionlessly. Hand over you? Naturally, it was impossible. Humph. You've already lost your life, yet you still want to protect a woman? What a joke. An existence like you is not qualified to be called a monster. The mid-grade gods of the Mo clan sneered. They were a little speechless at Bu Fong's behavior. As a genius, he acted so stupidly. He was destined not to achieve much in the future. Mo Hen's eyes narrowed, and her whole body began to tremble. If that's the case, then go to hell. Even if I kill you, I can still capture that woman. When the time comes, I will make you suffer 1,000 times, 100 times more humiliating to that woman. Mo Hen, who was almost crazy, roared at Bu Fong. His words made everyone present frown involuntarily. Luo Sanyang felt a burst of disgust. Mo Hen of the Mo clan was known as a business genius, but his business dealings were naturally somewhat dark. Everyone in the capital knew that Mo Hen's actions were very dirty. However, it was still a little disgusting to show it so blatantly. Then I'll kill you. In the void, facing Mo Hen's madness, Bu Fong said coldly. His eyes gradually froze, and a murderous intent surged out. How dare you? You can't even protect yourself, yet you still want to commit murder. It seems that we must destroy your cultivation base, throw you into prison, and let you understand what purgatory is on earth. One of the cabinet elders bellowed. As a monstrous demigod, Bufong's talent was absolutely extraordinary. If they could extract Bufong's talent and fuse it into the body of a junior of the Mo clan, it would be a good choice. For a moment, the eyes of the three cabinet elders flashed as they looked at Bufong. The Mo clan's method of robbing talent was no secret in the capital. Although it was against humanity, the Mo clan had a powerful backer. Although the people in the capital hated them, they could do nothing about it. After all, the imperial concubine of the Shai divine dynasty's divine emperor was from the Mo clan. Otherwise, with the Mo clan's brutal methods, they would surely be destroyed by the various aristocratic families. Bufong did not understand what these people were planning, but he could sense their malice. Bufong raised his head and glanced at the three mid-grade gods, his eyes bursting with cold, killing intent. "You three old dogs," Bufong scolded them. His voice rang out. A thunderclap rang out in the sky, as if a terrible wave was tearing the sky apart. One of the cabinet elders stood across the sky and slapped his hand down at Bufong, summoning a tremendous amount of terrible divine power. Rumble. The whole world seemed to be collapsing. "You people from the Mo clan are really lawless." Luo Sanyang felt helpless. The divine chef temple's name was an existence that deterred everyone in the capital. Unfortunately, they had run into the Mo clan. The Mo clan's backer was the imperial concubine, so they were naturally not afraid of the divine chef temple. If there was any power in the whole divine dynasty that was not afraid of the divine chef temple, it would be the imperial family. Although the Mo clan was not the imperial family, they had a woman from the Mo clan as the imperial concubine, which made them a relative of the imperial family. This was also the reason why the Mo clan was so arrogant. Since they could not come to an agreement, they would fight. It was not the first time she had wanted to beat up the members of the Mo clan. Rumble. With a flip of her hand, she found one of the cabinet elders and charged at him. Although she was not a genius demigod, her talent was peerless, and her fighting prowess was not weaker than this cabinet elder. She had also comprehended the power of 9 laws, but she had not perfected them yet. Rumble. The power of the laws and divine power surged in the sky, causing thunderclaps to ring out. Heaven and earth were broken, and the void turbulence emerged. Of course, compared with the netherworld, the Shai divine dynasty's space was much more stable, and it could not be easily torn. Although it was a fight between gods, the fluctuations did not spread. Fight! Luo Sanyang's fighting spirit was high. Her blood was boiling, and her eyes flashed. Her eyes flickered with divine light. She had already found helpers, so she had nothing to fear. Bufong, on the other hand, was even more violent. He and the 2 cabinet elders fought to a draw. Heaven and earth fell silent. The law of transmigration surged, triggering Bufong's power and making Bufong's strength stronger and stronger. Surrender yourself to us. Although you are a genius, you're only a demigod after all. The Mo clan's cabinet elder sneered. Their divine power was endless, but Bufong was only a demigod, and he was using the power of his divine sense. The longer they fought, the faster he would weaken. The divine sense of the 2 mid-grade gods formed a large net. The net fell and pressed down on Bufong inch by inch, forcing Bufong to the ground. The oppressive Bufong seemed to be crushing him. In the distance, the surrounding people fell silent. Bufong's strength was enough to shock everyone. Although theoretically, a genius demigod could fight a mid-grade god, that was basically the estimation of ordinary people. There were relatively few battles between geniuses and mid-grade gods. However, this battle stunned everyone. Bufong's opponent was not an ordinary mid-grade god. Mohen was laughing. His eyes were full of excitement. He wanted to cripple Bufong, put Bufong in prison, seize Bufong's talent, and use it to strengthen himself. He was very excited at the thought of this. Mo Song got up from the ground. He was the genius demigod of the Mo clan, but he was knocked to the ground by Bu Fong's punch. This was a humiliation. It was an endless humiliation, an inner demon on his path of cultivation. He had to get rid of this inner demon. So he raised his head, his eyes full of cold, killing intent. Damn it, I want you dead. Only your death can wash away the humiliation in my heart. He said coldly. He activated the law of gravity. Boom! Around his body, the entire world seemed to have become extremely heavy, and the ground seemed to have collapsed from the pressure. Mo Song, who was suppressing his body, suddenly released the law of gravity. His body shot forward like a spring. This method of suppressing the opponent to the extreme and then exploding it would make his speed explode to the extreme. A loud rumble rang out. The ground kept exploding. Mo Song had compressed the law of gravity to the extreme, compressing it into a small ball in his palm. As long as this ball exploded in Bu Fong's body, it would explode. Even geniuses with extraordinary fleshly bodies would be killed in an instant. The use of laws was extremely profound, not to mention his omnipresent law of gravity. In Mo Song's mind, his law of gravity was not weaker than the supreme laws of the universe. Boom! Boom! The void kept exploding. Like a cannonball, Mo Song approached abruptly and appeared in front of Bu Fong, who was suppressed by the divine sense of the two cabinet elders and could not move. Die! Mo Song's eyes exploded with monstrous killing intent, and they turned red. The supreme laws of the universe? Go to hell! Mo Song roared. Then, the energy ball of the law of gravity, which had been compressed to the extreme, smashed toward Bu Fong's face. Bu Fong, who was pressed to the ground, felt the approaching crisis. He let out a long breath. His face became extremely cold. Shao Tian come, he said. Kill those who deserve to be killed. All members of the Mo family should be killed, Bu Fong said. As soon as his voice rang out, a proud chuckle rang out in Bu Fong's spirit sea. Buzz, Mo Song's killing method approached. Just when it was about to hit Bu Fong's face, the hearts of the two cabinet elders, who were suppressing Bu Fong, skipped a beat. In a flash, Bu Fong's black hair turned silver-white. Looking up, Bu Fong's silver-white pupils turned into sharp swords that tore through the sky. The law of gravity? What kind of trash dares to offend Shao Tian? Boom! It was as if an explosion had reached the sky. Bu Fong's aura suddenly changed dramatically. The divine sense of the two cabinet elders seemed to be torn apart by the roar of a white tiger. Their faces turned pale, and they were knocked flying backward. White-haired Bu Fong slowly rose to his feet. In the face of Mo Song's law of gravity, he held out a hand. Slash! A crisp sound rang out. The law of gravity was crushed. As for Mo Song, his chest had been pierced. White-haired Bu Fong's eyes were as sharp as swords. With an evil smile, he rested his eyes on Mo Hen, who was trembling in the distance. You're courting death, aren't you? Chapter 1445. The whole place fell silent, and everyone was dumbfounded. They stared at Bu Fong in disbelief. Drip! Crimson blood flowed down and dripped on the ground, creating ripples as if it had fallen into a pond. The people present didn't know what to say. They were all shocked by the scene in front of them. On the way to the reception hall, they all sucked in their breaths and shivered. He's crazy. This chef from the Divine Chef Temple is courting death. Does he think he can do whatever he wants just because he has the Divine Chef Temple as his backer? He's a madman. I'm afraid even the Divine Chef Temple can't protect him now. They all shook their heads and looked at Bu Fong, who now had a head full of silver hair. They sighed with emotion. If Bu Fong had only saved a woman, he might have survived for the sake of the Divine Chef Temple. But once Bu Fong killed the heir of the Mo family, it would be tantamount to completely falling out with the Mo family. Then there would be no room for peace. Even Luo Sanyong never thought that Bu Fong would go so far. It was indeed crazy to kill the heir of the Mo family with one move. However, she somehow felt a little hot-blooded. Slash! Mo Tsong's eyes widened in disbelief. His body was lifted up, and he felt a sharp pain in his chest. Blood kept flowing out of his chest and dripping on the ground. He felt as if his heart had been crushed in an instant. However, he was, after all, an exceptional demigod, and his body's healing power was very strong. Even though his heart was crushed, he was still alive. The Mo family's means could save him. So, he had to escape from the madman in front of him now. He was an exceptional demigod, but in front of Bu Fong, he was as weak as a child and was killed in an instant. This was a huge blow to Mo Tsong. Of course, no matter how big the blow was, it was not as important as his life. All he had to do now was survive. Let go of me. Mo Tsong coughed up blood. His eyes grew sharp as he tried to break free. White-haired Bu Fong glanced indifferently at him. Boom! A terrifying thought suddenly shot out and hit Mo Tsong's body. Mo Tsong sensed a terrifying intent, and his spiritual consciousness felt like it was going to collapse in an instant. Blood spurted from his nose and mouth. Like a dead dog, Mo Tsong was sent flying and crashed into the distance. He was on the verge of death. After shaking off Mo Tsong, the white-haired Bu Fong's gaze shifted, locking onto the trembling Mo Hen in the distance. This was the person the host wanted to kill. He's courting death. White-haired Bu Fong shook his head. The next moment, an oppressive roar erupted from his body, and his figure disappeared on the spot, as if he had teleported. When he appeared again, he was already in front of Mo Hen. Ew! Mo Hen's pupils constricted. He felt that the guy in front of him seemed to have changed into another person. He became even more ruthless. You can't kill me, Mo Hen roared. You're courting death, and you're not letting me kill you? White-haired Bu Fong said coldly. His silver hair fluttered in the wind, and his sword-like eyes seemed to be able to pierce through one's heart. In the distance, the mid-grade god pavilion elders, who were shocked by Bu Fong's sudden move, all shouted angrily. Furious, they struck out in an instant. It was as if it had crossed the vast sky. In an instant, it was right next to Bu Fong. Evil creature. You still want me violent? The Mo family is not a place for you to behave atrociously. The mid-grade god was extremely cold. Streams of the power of law overlapped and swept out, pressing down on the white-haired Bu Fong. He wanted to kill Bu Fong. Mo Hen was so scared that he could not move. White-haired Bu Fong's eyes rolled slightly. The corners of his mouth curved upward. Then he slapped the ground with his palm. A loud bang rang out. White-haired Bu Fong's figure spun 360 degrees in an instant. He only spun once. Bu Fong's figure disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was behind the mid-grade god. A terrible chill enveloped the mid-grade god in an instant, making him feel cold all over. Damn it, the mid-grade god roared. He could not believe that his attack had missed. White-haired Bu Fong stuck close to the mid-grade god's body and smiled coldly. In my eyes, all of you are trash. His voice rang out. The mid-grade god's pupils constricted. Rumble. The next moment, white-haired Bu Fong grabbed his head and smashed it hard to the ground. With a loud bang, the ground exploded and a huge pit was formed. The pit was filled with rolling rubble. Roar. It was as if a white tiger had swooped down from the sky. In a flash, it hit the mid-grade god's body. Rumble. White-haired Bu Fong rose into the sky, while the mid-grade god howled miserably. This scene happened right in front of Mo Hen. At this moment, he felt an unprecedented fear. He had never thought that a mere demigod could be so terrifying. They were both demigods, but why was the gap between them so huge? Evil creature. The mid-grade god was in a sorry state, bleeding all over and furious. He never thought that he would be beaten so badly by a demigod. White-haired Bu Fong twitched the corner of his mouth as he hovered in midair. The next moment, he raised his hand like a tiger's claw, and a silver-white flame was burning in his palm. Host has finally activated the divine flame. This thing is a great killing weapon. White-haired Bufong's eyes were somewhat blurred as he stared at the silver flame. Then, he flicked his finger. A silver flame shot down like a meteor, reaching the mid-grade god in a flash. With a rumble, it pierced through his body. That mid-grade god probably didn't expect that his body would be pierced through. The power of the divine flame is invincible, and this is only the fusion of 3 laws. If 3,000 laws were fused into one flame, just a wisp of it would be enough to turn a mid-grade god like you into ashes. White-haired Bufong twitched the corner of his mouth and said disdainfully, "Rumble." Of the 3 mid-grade gods, one was held back by Luo Sanyang, while the other 2 were attacking Bufong. However, one of them was seriously injured by white-haired Bufong, and the other one suddenly came to his senses and unleashed a great killing blow. However, Bufong, who was possessed by White Tiger, had completely changed his fighting style. White Tiger was in charge of killing, and Bufong's body was filled with brutal killing intent. Buzz, it was as if he was teleporting. White-haired Bufong disappeared from where he was in a flash. At this moment, his strength, speed, and fighting skills were all improved countless times. Before the mid-grade god could react, his body was hit by hundreds of attacks. After a series of fierce attacks, he was even pinned to the ground by white-haired Bufong. A terrible explosion broke out in an instant. White-haired Bufong's palm was burning with the divine flame. The mid-grade god's fleshly body was blown up in an instant. A shrill and miserable howl resounded through the entire area. Everyone was already dumbstruck. It was a battle that happened in the blink of an eye. One after another, the 2 mid-grade gods were seriously injured. The divine sense of mid-grade gods was very strong. Even if their fleshly bodies were destroyed, their souls could still escape. But how could they escape from white-haired Bufong? His eyes narrowed slightly, and a disdainful sneer flashed across his face. White-haired Bufong held a silver flame in his hand. With a flick of his finger, the flame turned into a colorful tiger and pounced on the mid-grade god's soul. The sound of biting and tearing was accompanied by a miserable howl. The mid-grade god's divine soul was destroyed in an instant. It was completely devoured by Bufong's divine flame, and his power of the law had fused with the 6 paths. Although some of the laws were lost, it was not a loss. When a mid-grade god finally fell, Yang Qi's eyes widened. Everyone was boiling with excitement. Dead. He's really dead. A mid-grade god of the Mo clan is dead. Good heavens. What happened? Everyone felt their hearts shrink, as if a nightmare was roaring in their heads. A mid-grade god was the backbone of an aristocratic family, and the death of a mid-grade god was a major blow to the family, especially when it was a mid-grade god like Bufong, an expert among mid-grade gods. This genius demigod is really heaven-defying. Even the young master of the Mo clan can't do this. Mo Hen was trembling all over. He looked at Bufong in horror. Bufong is dead. He was killed by that demon-like man. Is he really AF * King Chef? How could there be such a ferocious chef? Aren't all the chefs in the Divine Chef Temple so weak that they only know how to use kitchen knives? Without hesitation, Mo Hen turned, scrambled, and tried to flee. He ran wildly, trying to escape from white-haired Bufong's slaughter. White-haired Bufong withdrew his divine flame and focused his eyes. A faint sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. Then he stomped his foot down. The ground exploded in an instant, like a tiger coming down the mountain. He moved as fast as lightning and approached Mo Hen. Mo Hen's whole body was shaking like a sieve. At this moment, he really regretted it. The crown prince was seriously injured, a cabinet elder was crippled, and another cabinet elder was killed. Is this the strength of a top genius demigod like the young master? I can't believe he's so ridiculous as to want to devour the talent of such an existence. Mo Hen rolled and crawled, snot and tears streaming down his face. Facing death, he really felt fear. Luo Sanyang was entangled with a mid-grade god, but she was extremely shocked. Crazy. This is too crazy. I can't believe he killed a mid-grade god. How crazy is that? She realized that she had underestimated Bufong. If he can kill even a mid-grade god, then this Bufong is probably the strongest genius demigod under the crown prince. Boom, boom. The ground exploded again and again. Hen frantically fled toward the guest tower. However, he was no match for white-haired Bufong, and he was caught up in just a flash. White-haired Bufong said nothing. The divine flame lingered over his palm. The power of the law was surging in the divine flame. Although it had devoured so many laws, the power of the law in the divine flame was disorderly. Only the rich fragments of the law floated and spread. In the sky, the divine flame suddenly turned into a tiger's claw. Hen was fleeing frantically. The tiger's claw fell out of thin air. It was powerful enough to kill a mid-grade god. Once the flaming tiger's claw fell, Hen would die for sure. The mid-grade god who was fighting with Luo Sanyong was furious. All the people on the guest building didn't move either. They could only watch Bufong chase after Hen. The fifth prince sat on a chair in the guest tower, fiddling with a jade bead as he watched Hen flee in a panic. A playful smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Teacher, please save Hen. That boy is Mother's nephew after all. If I save his life, Mother will owe me a favor." The fifth prince smiled faintly. The old man opposite the fifth prince immediately opened his eyes. There was a faint divine light flashing in his eyes. "There's no need for me to do anything. This is the Mo family, and their experts will help," the old man said. As soon as his voice rang out, a clap of thunder exploded in the sky. A bolt of lightning streaked across the sky. "Evil creature, you killed the pavilion master of the Mo family, and you deserve to die. Unforgivable." A voice that seemed to come from the ninth heaven resounded. The next moment, in the sky, the clouds parted. Suddenly, a finger fell from the sky. It went straight for Bufong. White-haired Bufong jerked his head up. His silver hair spread out and lashed at the void. The white tiger's sword, I went straight for the finger in the sky. The flaming tiger's claw changed direction and collided with the finger. The tiger's claw collapsed at the first touch. The whole artificial lake exploded. The terrible pressure of the divine sense enveloped the whole place. It was as if a towering mountain was falling. White-haired Bufong stood still. The water of the artificial lake splashed like a heavy rain. The rain wet his face, making him look even more demonic. A high-grade god, that you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.